So I'm here today, and I want to answer a couple questions that were sent to me, and I'm going to answer them with some just super short videos that talk about minimum viable product, that talk about who you should interview when you're talking about validating your idea, and then as well,
Techies with AD.
Justin Wilcox, great guy. The first one I want to do though is Mr. Reese, and then we'll yes. This is a very short. Eric Reese is famous. He's lean startup expert, #1 out there, and he has a very short 3-minute video that talks about what we call minimum viable product. And so when you're developing your idea, we don't want you to build the largest mousetrap. We want you to test as cheaply as possible if your idea is actually going to sell in the market. So he's got some comments here that he'll play. So how about you stay there? This is good.
Yeah,
you know?
I'll come back.
We'll tag team here, and we'll make sure that's right on.
Do you want to tell Bull Valley to mute theirs and go ahead, or just try to listen to them?
Let me say a word about minimum viable product. I know, people will have heard of this phrase at least a little bit. The idea here is we want to most startups are torn between these two different approaches to building product. One which I call maximizing chance of success. Says, look, we're only got one shot at this, so let's get it right. Right? That's what I talked about in startup #1. We're going to ship it when it's right. And that actually is perfectly rational. If you only have one shot, you want to take the best shot you can, build the most perfect product you can. The issue is, of course, you can spend, I don't know, say 5 years of stealth R&D building a product you think customers want, and then discover to your chagrin that they don't. So the other possible extreme approach is to say, well, let's just do release early, release often. People have heard that phrase. And this just says, look, we'll just throw whatever crap we have out there, and then we'll hear what customers say, and we'll do whatever they say. But the issue there is if you show a product to 3 customers, you get 30 opinions, and now what do you do? So minimum viable product is kind of a synthesis of those two possible extremes. We want to figure out what's the minimum set of features necessary to engage with those early evangelists, to start the learning feedback loop going. And so sometimes I get to ask the question, well, how do you know if you found the minimum viable product? And from a theoretical point of view, this is quite challenging. You could make a really interesting argument that any given feature is absolutely 100% necessary to learn. But the good news is there's no reason to deal with this theoretical issue, because if you're like me and like every entrepreneur I know, what you think the minimum viable product is way too big. Probably 2 orders of magnitude too many features. I'm not exaggerating. So the easy formula for finding out what the minimum viable product is take what you think it is right now and cut it in half, and do that 2 more times, and ship that. And I know, customers are going to absolutely hate that thing that's only 1/8 as big as you thought it should be, right? And that's fine. If you ship that and customers say, you moron, how could you have shipped without having features X, Y, and Z, the things that were all going to be on your roadmap anyway? You can say, good idea, good point, and then go build features X, Y, and Z. But you may be surprised, well, of course not you, but maybe you know a friend, who would be surprised to ship a product as I did, and nobody cares. They don't say, you idiot, it should have features X, Y, and Z. The worst fate of any shipping any product is just nobody cares. You don't get any feedback at all, right? That's what most features on most products do. They're just dead weight. So what we want to do is try to eliminate those and ship without them. Of course, that's because visionary customers can fill in the gaps, right? Early adopters can be very forgiving of missing features. They see the vision, and you can be in dialogue with them going through that learning feedback loop. Here are the reasons why people don't do the minimum viable product. I'll just try to address them really quickly. First, the fear of the false negative. So I ship my minimum viable product. If it had just had that one extra feature, customers would have loved it, but because it didn't, of course, they hated it. So duh, why would I bother shipping something I know customers will hate? And there's nothing wrong with that reasoning. All I want you to do is ship anyway. So maybe customers will love it even though it doesn't have feature X, and then you can kind of go on and be very successful. And if you're wrong, and they really do need feature X, then you can just build feature X. If you want to do minimum viable product, you have to be prepared to iterate. And so you have to have the courage to say, yeah, we'll ship something, get negative feedback, and respond.
So we'll go to hack now. So that's a quick and dirty response to minimum viable product. It's good we got sound, and we'll just wait a sec. I'll talk for a sec before we go to hack one. Okay. So minimum viable product as cheap as possible. So for example, I had an example where people were wondering about a gas station, and they wanted to know if it would be feasible to have it in a certain location. So to build a gas station to find out if it's feasible or not is very, very expensive. So what we get as a result is, how about if you just put a stand up at a location and you have some jerry cans there and you test to see if people will actually stop or even see what you're all about. Just a test site, very, very simple to see if the traffic flow even exists there without having to build a facility to find out. And then of course do the research to say what kind of traffic flow do you need to be located at that site. Another gentleman that was really, really cool last year in his tech presentation, Kenny Joss, he wanted to buy this scanner that cost quite a bit of money to be able to scan technology. Instead of using tape measures on site, he was going to use digital scanning and then import it into his AutoCAD and his metal fabrication software to be able to reproduce measurements that are out in the field rather than tape measure. So he said, I gotta have a scanner in order to show people. I said, no. So when we were finished with this minimum viable product, he had 2 flow charts. And he went and listened to the problem that these mechanical contractors have and these people in plants have in regards to the challenges of using tape measures to measure things on site. And he said, if I've heard it correctly, you as the contractor, you do this, then you do this, you do this, you do this, and problems can happen here, here, here. And so the issue is that it's cost, it's time, and it's quality issues. And he was able to point that stuff out to them. And he said, what if I had a different solution? Would you be interested in it? And they said, right now. We would love to be able to have a different solution. So what he did is he showed his solution, which was much more simpler than the complicated mess that currently existed in that marketplace. And he said, I think that I could be reasonable on our costs, be much more effective, and have a lot better quality in the marketplace. He got validation by a number of people, so much so they wanted to invest in his company. He couldn't let them invest in the company because the other competitors then would not want to use his services. It's a finicky market down in Lethbridge here. So fascinating, he sent me a text, and he had bought his machine and all this kind of stuff. He sent me a text last week, and he said, Bruce, he said, I went to this major mechanical contractor, and we had a project, and we went to a job site. It was a building inside that had 7,000 square feet. And he says, we went there for 4 hours and we did scanning shots from 54 different spots through the facility, and we rendered all of that digital technology. And I showed it to the people at the mechanical contracting place, and they're blown away. It would have taken them 2 weeks to do the same thing manually and would be highly inaccurate. So he just showed a minimum viable product as to, here's the problems you currently have, here's what I could do. And he said, wow, that's cool. Now that these people have seen this particular model, he will be very busy. Now, he's a smart guy. He says, I'm not going to charge less than what it costs them now. Why would you? It only costs 4 hours rather than 2 weeks of labor, the old-fashioned way. But if he's able to give them better quality in a more timely fashion, why would you be low cost? So his challenge is to figure out what the right pricing is now. So that would be an example of a minimum viable product. Okay? I teach a course, New Venture, and we have 5 groups right now. And last semester, we had, I think I'd mentioned previous class, Spanish restaurant. Well, it'd be a little crazy to open up a Spanish restaurant and then hope people would come. That's a $3 million investment when all's said and done in that particular world. So instead, what could you do as a minimum viable product? So you folks aren't in the restaurant business. What would you see as an opportunity as a minimum viable product to test the idea as to whether people would be interested? Thoughts? Bootstrapped.
Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Food truck.
Food truck. Good idea. And farmer's market, another idea, right? Test the food out. Is it Amar? I'm trying to think of what his company is that's doing the Syrian food. Is it Duran 55, right? Okay. So what did he do? He went to the, oh my goodness, a farmer's market. Why do I have this mental block on farmer's markets? It always costs me a lot of money when I go there. That's why. And he tested his food out. And now he's been doing a bunch of different things. I just got a text from him inviting me to a facility on Friday or next Friday, one of them, to test some of his food and stuff like that. So he's doing these things to gain awareness and build momentum before they make an investment or if they ever do that. I had someone come to me the other day and they said, you know, skip the dishes. It's so popular now. So during the Super Bowl, I was talking to people at Earl's restaurant. They said, our front end will be dead, our back end will be busy. I said, what's back end? They said, the kitchen. Makes sense. And then another guy came to me and said, what if we just build a commercial kitchen and offer all the products that these restaurants do and you skip the dishes? It'd be so much cheaper and more efficient. You don't have to worry about that front end. You don't have to worry about the waitress staff that's in there. It would be very, very cost effective for us if we could get rid of that. I said, well, that's a neat idea. I'm not sure that the market's ready to adapt your concept yet, but it might be one or two of them that are joint and owned by a corporation that might take a challenge at that and might risk it. But I'm not sure all the restaurants in town would gather and allow you to be able to make their product and expect and ensure a quality and consistency in delivery. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there. So minimum viable product, how can you get away with it as cheaply as possible? And the idea simply is, if you're going the wrong direction, you go and test it, and you can change it without having spent a fortune. I wrote $100,000 on this particular board. I went into an organization and the guy had hired a software person, spent $100 grand on developing software and had not talked to one customer. I said, you gotta be kidding me. We used a business model canvas and he got a real education. Fortunately, he had money. So he wasn't broke and remortgaging and all this kind of crazy stuff. And he was totally off base. Nobody wanted his product in Lethbridge. So it died. Now he's a smart guy. He got onto another venture and he's doing incredibly well in some other stuff. But lesson learned, you gotta go out and talk to people and find out if in fact they have a problem that you can solve and it's a high enough priority that they're willing to do one thing for you, pay bucks. Okay? Now we want to play two more short videos. This is Justin Wilcox. He's a really cool guy, Justin Wilcox. Hack 1 and Hack 3 is what we're going to show. Those of you who were in our entrepreneurial boot camp saw it last fall, but it's always good reputation because you're going to go out, the people who say, my product will serve the entire market, I'm sorry I got news for you. Even Apple hasn't been able to take the entire market out there, okay? Even Tide doesn't take the entire market. So it's restricted. You can only work with so many people out there. And remember, you're brand new. So the people you want to find out and work with are what we call the early adopters. Who are going to take a chance on you? Who are going to switch and go over to your facility first? So in the case of the Syrian food, early adopters. And then as it builds up and the word spreads by the early adopters, man, this is good stuff. Then they're going to start to build more momentum and they'll get the early majority. Late majority, they'll say, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, there was an Ethiopian restaurant in town here. And with the Ethiopian restaurant, you did not use utensils, right? He needed to have early adopters to recognize how cool and neat it was in order to build his clientele. My father was a steak and potato kind of guy, used his same utensils and held them the same way for 86 years. Right? He has not a chance of going anywhere else. I'm staying at home. That's where I'm eating, right? And the big excitement might have been going to the Burger Baron for a burger. He was not the market. We want to make sure you know who your market is.
Question, should the minimum viable product be part of the business plan?
Oh, most definitely, because when you're presenting to the people that will be judging, will want to say, so what did you do to find out if the market even saw that as a problem and that there was a need at this point in time? Remember, I said a lot of it's luck and timing. Airbnb, right, and Uber was 2008 when the market fell in the US and people were looking for alternatives for cheap accommodation and cheap travel. It all aligned properly. Cannabis right now is a perfect opportunity. It all aligns. My question is the first ones in, will they be the first ones out? Will the last ones in be the ones that take the beating? How many stores will we need in Southern Alberta to service the market? And that's the unknown. Huh? That's the unknown. Will we need 43 of them? It seems like a lot, but I haven't done my research. And I haven't gone to Colorado to find out how it exists over there. You want to look at other markets that are leading edge all the time to find out what's going on. Don't be naive with Southern Alberta. Remember, I've made the comment we're a big Raymond and not a little Calgary, right? Which is a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Less traffic, except our hoop-up drive. That's special. So let's play hack number one. So this is who to interview. And you'll probably want to kill the lights on this one too.
Do you want to start there?
Yeah, we'll start at the very beginning. I'm so sorry. 7-minute video.
Hey, next attendees, I'm Justin Wilcox. I'm the founder of Nimbus Health, a software company where we help hospitals automate medical record processing. Now, that's what I do for work, but what I do for fun is actually Customer Dev Labs. It's a blog where I and other founders take our customer development experiences and we write them up and share them so that other people don't fall into the same traps that we did getting started. So, if you like what we talk about today, definitely go check out the blog. Speaking of which, what we're talking about today is 4 customer discovery hacks. These are the 4 things that I found hardest to get started with customer development. All right, the first thing we're going to do is talk about who to interview. Now, if you're like me, you think that your cool idea can solve just about everybody's problem in the world. But we know that that's actually not the case, because if we try and solve too many people's problems, we end up building a crappy product for a lot of people, as opposed to an incredible product for one group of people, and that's what we want to do. But how do we figure out which group of people to build our product for? So I've been experimenting with an app recently, an app to help people be on time to their appointments, and I listed out all of the customer segments who could benefit from this app. You know, folks like real estate agents and college freshmen, techies with ADD, and folks with ADD that can't conceptualize time very well. You know, mommy bloggers. So I had a whole list of customer segments, but then I got like a little overwhelmed. Like, which of these customer segments should I focus on? Which one should I go out to interview? So I came up with something that I like to call the spa treatment. So let's see how that works. So what I'm going to do is write S, P, and A. And then for each of my customer segments, I'm going to score them as we take them to the spa. Now the goal here is simply to prioritize our customer segment list so we can figure out which ones we should start interviewing. So the S here stands for size. So when we start talking about size, what I'm going to do is I'm going to score each one of these customer segments from 1 to 3. I'm going to give it a 1 if I measure this customer segment in terms of hundreds or thousands of customers. If it's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers, I'm going to give it a 2. And if it's 1 million customers or more, I give it a 3. So let's see how this works. Real estate agents, I'm going to say, I don't know, there's maybe like 100,000 real estate agents out there. So I'm going to give it a 2. Now notice that this is not scientific at all. In fact, I know that I'm just pulling this number out of thin air. But I'm doing that because we're just going to try and prioritize this list so we can get out of the building. We don't care if it's scientific. We'll go validate all this stuff later. All right, so college freshmen, how many of those do we think there are? I don't know, millions? Techies with ADD, 20,000, 30,000. Let's put it at 2 here. So I would go through normally the rest of all the customer segments, but you get what I'm doing. Let's talk about P. P is for the likelihood that they'll pay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to consider whether someone has money and whether they have the actual pain that we're trying to solve as to a combination will tell us how likely they are to pay. So if someone has a little money or a little pain, we're going to give them a 1. If they've got a lot of money and a lot of pain, we're going to give them a 3. Somewhere in the middle, we'll give them a 2. So let's see how this looks. So real estate agents. Now these guys, it's important for them to be on time for their work. So we think they might have the pain, and they also have a little bit of money because they have a job. But of course, real estate agents are somehow able to be on time now, so maybe it's not the biggest pain in the world. I don't know, I'm just going to give it a 2. For college freshmen, now these guys, when I was a freshman, I know I had this pain a lot. I was always late to class. But of course, I also didn't have any money. So I definitely fell in the 1 category, and I imagine a lot of other freshmen do too. All right, techies with ADD. Now again, people with ADD, I know that they have this problem, so it's a big pain, but techies, and now techies, do they have money? I'm considering a techie as someone with like the iPhone, the latest iPhone, or maybe N-1 an iPhone. So I'm going to actually consider that they do have money and pain. I'm going to give them a 3. All right, now it's time to move on to A. A is for access. By access, I mean how easy is it for me to access these customers, to market my solution to them, and to get them to pay me for it. And I measure that in the amount of time it takes to get their money. So if it would take me weeks to advertise my product and get their money, I give them a 1. If it would take days, let's say I've got some email lists I've built up over time, I just need to email people and then send them to some website and then get them to give me their credit card information. It would just take a couple days to get their money. I give them a 2. And if it's hours, get a couple press write-ups, launch on some forum, and then all of a sudden we start making money, I give them a 3. So in this case, real estate agents, these guys, I don't know any of them. I don't know any of their brokerages, so it's definitely not like a 3. But I imagine some number of them read a consistent number of blogs or on forums. So I don't know. I'm going to give these guys a 2 on access. When it comes down to college freshmen, these guys are a different story. Like, I might be able to get on some forums that cater to college students, but then it's all college students, not just freshmen. So if I just wanted freshmen, then I would have to go to each individual school and talk to counselors and housing. That sounds like a nightmare, and it would take me weeks probably. Now, techies with ADD, that's an entirely different ball of wax, because these guys, I know which articles and blogs they read, and I've got some connections at Lifehacker and some other media outlets, plus some Hacker News hacking, and I could probably make some money on an app that was already in the App Store within a number of hours. So I'm going to give these guys a 3. Now all that's left is to multiply each of these numbers together and see which customer segment comes out on top. So for real estate agents, we've got a score of 8. For college freshmen, we've got 3. And for techies with ADD, we've got 18. So you can see here that from the list that I have right now, techies with ADD are the largest customer segment that I can access quickly who will also pay me for my solution. So that's where I'm going to start. Now, of course, if it turns out that any of these assumptions are wrong, and basically they're guaranteed to be wrong, it's okay, because that's what we're going to go do now. We're going to get out of the building, we're going to interview these folks, figure out what we got wrong, and if it turns out that we're totally wrong about their ability to pay or interest in paying us, that's fine. We'll move on to our next customer segment. So that's how I take my long list of customer segments, prioritize them so that I can get out of the building. And now it's your turn. So go ahead and write down 3 to 5 customer segments, give them the spa treatment, and figure out which ones you should be interviewing.
So I'll give you an example of someone local here. David Agama is a realtor in town. He goes to conferences and conventions, and he's on top of what's happening in the North American marketplace. And he came up with a concept called Just Ring the Bell. And he's been working on it for the last 1.5 years. And the idea is quite simple. Put some electronics, some video, some monitoring equipment in a house, and allow anybody to go in the house and check it out without a realtor walking around with you. Okay? Now some people say, woo, scary, yet you're allowing Airbnb in houses. So he's sort of stretching out there with the idea. And he says, the last thing people want is for me to be hanging around. So he did a minimum viable product is he hooked one house up with some basic electronic stuff, and he invited an older lady to come in. And it was a house that was over $600,000 in value. Wow. She, first time came in, took a look at it. Second time went in, wanted to see what it was like in daylight. Third time, nighttime and the colors of the house. Fourth time, tape measure, measuring the rooms. She bought the house. He never saw her as a real estate agent until she was ready to do the deal. Okay? Different idea. Now, spa treatment. There's all kinds of different real estate categories. There's the brokers that are national and international. Do you go to them first? Highly unlikely he'll get any recognition by the folks that are in Toronto and the bigger centers. Who would he go to? So when you actually boiled it down, he went to small home builders who love to build houses and hate to do the sell side of it. And they don't want to be around on a Sunday afternoon sitting in a place wondering if someone's going to show up. So these guys, this opportunity helps take care of the sales side of it because they like to build. They don't like the selling side of it. So he hooked it up with some of these new builders, and sure shooting, that's what worked. He found those early adopters who had that pain, who had enough money invested in their building that this would be insignificant amount of money, right? Size, not a big market out there, but one that he could find out if his minimum viable product would work. Last time I talked to him, yes, we're expanding into Calgary and blah, 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 blah. And David is quite a character. I mean, he thinks out of the box and he goes against the grain in the real estate agencies quite a bit. Hats off to him for being creative. It's a win for him because he's not wasting his time on a Sunday afternoon wondering if someone's going to show up for the house. It's a win for the people because anytime between 9 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night, you can go 7 days a week on your schedule. Smart idea, right? So he had though to find, all realtors aren't the same. I'm sure some that probably aggressively go against him competitively may never use his service. But if he goes to a bigger market with the idea, they don't know him. So very much so, could fit into that particular program. So there's an example of finding the right market when you're talking to people. Okay? Can we run the next one? So the next one is when I first talked the first night, we want you to ask questions. A lot of people will get specific about their stuff and they'll go in and just tell people, what do you think? And those people will automatically go say, yeah, really cool idea. We don't want you to do that when you're discovering whether you've got a viable product or not. We want to make sure that you clearly understand the problem that they have. Clearly understand it, and are they willing to pay for it? Is it a big enough problem that they're willing to pay you for it? A lot of people are just nice and don't go to your relatives. They're the last ones you want to go to. So Justin has one more segment here. He's a phenomenal guy. You can get this all on YouTube. Just key in Justin Wilcox, key in hack, and you've got it. And very cool.
Hey, next attendees, I'm Justin Wilcox. I'm the founder of Nimbus Health, a software company where we help hospitals automate medical record processing. Now that's what I do for work, but what I do for fun is actually Customer Dev Labs. It's a blog where I and other founders take our customer development experiences and we write them up and share them so that other people don't fall into the same traps that we did getting started. So if you like what we talk about today, definitely go check out the blog. Speaking of which, what we're talking about today is 4 customer discovery hacks. These are the 4 things that I found hardest to get started with customer development. All right, now that we've got our interview set up, we need to figure out what are we going to ask our customers. And this is something that I really struggled with when I started customer development. So that's why we have hack number 3, what to ask. So a couple ground rules for interviewing. Number 1, no pitching. This is about listening. If you find yourself ever proposing a part of your solution just to get some feedback on it, stop. You're pitching, and we don't want to do that. The reason being, as soon as you start pitching, your mind changes gears. It goes from learning and absorbing information into trying to pitch something and sell a product. And this time is all about learning. So So this is all about listening to your customer, all about listening to their problems. You'll have plenty of time to pitch later. Okay, rule number 2. Past and present questions are fantastic. That's what we're going to ask. Questions about the future, like would you ever or will you ever, hypothetical questions, those are no good. We want to ask questions like have you ever, or tell me about the last time, things that have happened in the past and are in the present. Now the reason is, if we ask about future questions, we're getting our customers' predictions, and those are basically useless. And in fact, they can be worse than useless, because if they tell us something that we want to hear, would you ever pay $5 for blah, 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 and they say yes, we might mislead ourselves into thinking we have a real product. The truth is they don't know the answer to that question, and it's going to be misleading, so we don't do it. The other reason is, as soon as you're asking would you or will you questions, you're probably starting to pitch a solution, and we don't want to do that. Okay, so with those ground rules in place, let's talk about what you ask your customers. The script that I use looks a little something like this. Number 1, tell me a story about the last time problem context. So for example, tell me about the last time you were late to an appointment. Now the reason why we ask this question first is because it's very open-ended, it's asking for a story, and it's asking our customer to sort of go on whatever tangents they want. And what we're looking for here are things that are particularly difficult or annoying for our customer. So your job is to ask this question, listen intently, and then dig in. When you find your customer talk about something that's interesting to you that you don't know about or you don't fully understand, dig in, ask questions. Why was that hard? What was annoying about that? Why is that way? This is where you're going to spend most of your time. Now, if during this conversation it's not obvious to you what was the hardest part about this context, you're going to ask them explicitly, what was the hardest part about this problem that you ran into? Then they're going to tell you the hardest part, and this is exactly what we want. And now this question, number 3, this is golden. It's also very awkward. You're going to ask them, why was that hard? Let me give you an example of why it's going to be awkward. So, tell me about the last time you were late. Oh, you know, I had to feed the dog, and I had to pick up my keys, and I couldn't find them, and then I ran into traffic. What was the hardest part about it? The traffic was so annoying. It was frustrating. And then I'm going to ask, why was that hard? And they're going to think, of course, I know why that's hard. It's hard because it was frustrating. And we're going to ask them, and they're going to say, you know why it was hard? Because I had to drive across a bridge, and I was afraid I was going to run out of gas, and I was stuck in traffic. And we ask because the why is exactly what we're going to parrot back to our customers when it's time to go pitch our solution. We want to use our customers' own words when we market to them so that we know it will resonate. So in this case, why was it hard? Afraid to run out of gas? We can say, afraid to run out of gas because you're running late. That might be the best marketing message. So this is really important. Even if it's awkward to ask, make sure you understand why this was particularly hard. Number 4, we're going to ask, how do you solve this problem now? So I might ask, how do you solve this lateness problem now? They might say, oh, you know, I just am not late at all. I just don't care. I don't do anything. In that case, we know this isn't a real pain for our customer because they're not trying to solve the problem. If they are trying to solve the problem, you know, I set my clocks forward fast, and I try and get reminders from Google and blah, blah, blah. Then we can ask the next question, which is, why is that solution not awesome? If they say, oh, you know what, I know the clocks are set fast, and I just ignore the reminders, we've got a problem they're trying to solve, so it's a real problem, and their solution is not awesome. So maybe we can solve it in a better way. All right, so this is the outline for your interview. These are the basics. Bonus points, though, if you can do any of these 3 things. Number 1, emotions. Take real note of the emotions your customer expresses during the interview. Frustration, anger, guilt, greed, happiness, whatever it is, note those down, because those emotions, that's how you're going to connect with your customer. When you can empathize with your customer, they can feel that, and that's how we're going to actually move our solution. Number 2, three-peat. Once you get through this process, you can start all the way over at the beginning. Tell me about another time you were late. If you can get through this process 3 times, you'll learn something new every time, and you'll really understand your customer through and through. Finally, 5 whys. If you can ask why 5 times, why was that hard? Why did you do it that way? Why is the world like it is? You will understand the core crux of why someone is doing what they're doing and why it's difficult. If you ask 5 times, you'll get down to the core emotion and the core motivation of what it is that they're trying to solve. All right, so that's my script, and now it's your turn. Go ahead and write your version of this script, and then go to a neighbor and interview him or her. When you do, make sure you're not pitching, and that you're always asking questions about the past and the present, and never about the future. Good luck. So all this information is documented up on customerdevlabs.com. Hospitals automate medical record processing. Now that's what I do for work, but what I do for fun is actually...
Okay, so you see those open-ended questions? Not closed. Open-ended questions to discover if they've got a problem that's important enough to them that they're going to pay you money on. Okay? My daughter bought this house in Copperwood. It's 10 years old. I told her, when you buy the house, be expected to be replacing everything. It's 10 years old. Okay? So, hot water tank. Dad, it's leaking on the bottom. I told her, go to this great plumber. So plumber came over, knocked some frost off the vent on the outside of the house, and said that should fix your problem, and gave her a bill for $100. Okay? Now, as a millennial, she doesn't think she got value for that. And she already had looked online to see what are the problems. And I had convinced her, hot water tank's 10 years old, it needs to be replaced, because they have a 1-year warranty. And 10-year-old hot water tanks can cause you some problems. And she doesn't have one of those pizza pans underneath to collect all the water when it starts to leak, right? So she's not very happy with me right now, because she still doesn't believe the hot water tank needs to be replaced. So we're having a debate about it. So she has a different view. But from a plumber's perspective, she can't believe that that was a $100 bill. I said, that person drove from the south side in their vehicle to your place, looked at things, kicked the frost off the unit, and drove home. He's a time and materials kind of guy. And he charges $89 an hour normally, right? So that's just outrageous, right? She's a great lady. We'll build a relationship with the plumber in the future when she really does need a hot water tank. And being a dad, I'll probably pay for the darn thing, right? So that's how that all goes, that's for sure. So I wanted to give you a little explanation on that 5 whys, very much created from the quality movement years ago when Japan was reconstructing itself and Edward Deming was involved in the quality movement. And I have this standard one that I always talk about. Was in an organization and they had a forklift that had a flat tire. And I said, why did it have the flat tire? There's a nail in it. Why did it have a nail in it? Because it ran over the nail on the regular route that the forklift goes through the facility. And I said, why? And they said, because there's a box of nails and the cardboard, they fell out of the box and were on the ground and the forklift ran over. I said, why was there the box nails that had opened up? Because they said it was wet. I said, why? Because the roof was leaking and dripping water on that box. The root cause was a leaky roof. But too many people focus on, well, the forklift's got a flat tire. And they're not focused on what's the root cause to fix that puppy, right? So you got to drill down, and that's why he's saying use the 5 whys. And if you get down there, you'll find out the root cause of why things are causing problems, right? Right now, my house is much too cold. The reason being, it has very little insulation in it. And I have a high efficiency furnace in it, and the puppy's going full tilt all the time. And it's making me cranky because when those utility rates go up, life is going to be expensive in my house, right? So, interesting. You could say it's just cold out, but that's just not the case. Okay, so that was 15 minutes to answer the questions.
Yes.
Come and see me, talk to me, send me an email, whatever you like. Be glad to help you. Like I said, we teach this in 13 weeks, not in 2.5 hours. So there's a lot of good stuff to it. Be glad to help you out. So Morley Bell normally does this presentation. He got a knee surgery. How's he doing?
He's doing great.
Awesome.
Yep, that was a 20 kid.
A friend of mine got a double knee replacement last Thursday. A double knee. I thought, why would you do that to yourself when it's icy out and the whole bit? But I guess he wants to only experience the pain significantly once instead of twice, right?
Just have a caregiver.
Who must have a caregiver? A darn good one, I hope. Okay. So cash flow. I've been involved with this Chinook Entrepreneurial since Bonnie Elliott started it, and the number one problem is cash flow sucks on most of the presentations that we see. You don't do enough homework to determine your costs. So I'll say, you don't have to be an accountant, but you have to really study and understand what your costs of operation are. And because you come from a number of different areas, it's very, very hard to hone into one specific one, but we are available. So for example, if you're doing consulting or you're providing services and things like that, a lot different than if you're manufacturing things with cost of goods sold. Okay? So we'll try to accommodate most of that in our discussions today. And I'm a guy that uses the whiteboard quite a bit, so we'll flow back and forth, and God help us, everything will function properly. So I believe Morley starts off here because he's a man who learned the tough way and ran out of cash. And he ended up having to sort of make amends over a period of time, if I remember his story. I have another fine friend who trusted people and billed them a bunch of money for work done, all in good faith, only to have 2 clients stiff her. And so she literally left Lethbridge, moved to Vancouver, got a salary job, made enough money so she could come back and pay the debt that she owed other people. She started her business all over again and would never borrow from banks, did it on a cash basis. Tough way to do it, very tough way to do it, especially when you're working for people like the city of Lethbridge and the college who take a certain period of time to pay bills. Okay? So if you're in a cash business, hats off to you. If you're not in a cash business, you have to be very attuned to and follow those accounts receivables. I was very sloppy in one of my business units. We manufactured custom-built stainless steel aluminum horse trailers. And we made the mistake of selling them to people from the States. Try to collect from someone from the United States on something that's got wheels. Impossible, right? And we were so foolish, we did it in good faith. Nothing that I had to write $100,000 off the first year because I was so stupid, allowing people to leave with a beautiful product and wasn't able to pay. I trimmed that down significantly. And we were a multi-million-dollar operation. If I had $6,000 in write-offs a year, I was really upset with myself. Far cry from 100 grand for a few events like that. So you have to be careful. So this can put you under because it's a timing of when cash comes in and when cash goes out. And sometimes it goes out quicker than it's coming in. And that's not a cool situation if you're not aware of it, okay? Often we'll do stuff on a monthly basis, but you need to sometimes do it on a weekly or a daily basis so that you really understand, okay, I'm sending this out to somebody, and when will they pay? And once they've got control of your stuff, it's tough to get money from them because they've got priorities in life too, and they might not pay you when you were hoping that they would pay you. So I really encourage you to dot the I's and cross the T's. I've been to enough sessions with lawyers that they often make the same comment. He or she who has the last piece of paper with a signature on it has a better chance of winning in the end. But the he said, she said in a dialogue doesn't go well in front of small claims court, right? And small claims court is a significant amount of money nowadays, so it's not like it used to be. So objectives, we're gonna talk about forecasting, managing, and some financial control. He's got some beautiful slides here. So your risk, hopefully you'll take calculated risks after this course because everything you're learning here is giving you an education in something. It's a starter, it's a tease, but all the people who come here are willing to help you out. And so you just have to ask them, man alive, How many of you can go and ask lawyers that's not going to charge you a significant amount of money after the first time? You know, so there's people out here that will help you through all the different avenues. So we want you to be able to take it from the unknown, a high risk to calculated risk, and then do the legwork. So nothing's easy. There's no shortcut in the process. The more you know, and that should be part of the passion of being in business, is having that capacity to learn. I asked you a question at the beginning of the session, who's making money? As a business person, always be attuned to who's making money out there. I'm surprised that some of the businesses that have closed down in the last 2 months that you have not thought about, or all of a sudden they're gone. You know, Edible Elegance down on Remmergut Drive. Whoa, they closed up, I think it was December 23rd after their last major order, a franchise operation. And great people, love their product. It was not a cheap product. You paid for the quality of their particular product. But what went wrong there? So I asked them, right? Sort of franchisee, franchisor thing. Rules of game changed. Good Earth, closed. Wow, went in on a Saturday, and Good Earth had a little sign there. We're closing on, I think it was the 25th of January. Yeah, a Thursday, right? So a whole bunch of us that have loved the place for years piled in on the Thursday, and a lot of tears, a lot of sadness. You know, good folks had spent 10 years there, but the debate was I better not say their ages, they're a little older, right? Do they want to sign a 5-year lease with an option for another 5 years? McGuire's Menswear, been around for decades. Do they want to sign another lease at their age for another 5 and 10 years? This kind of thing takes place. You know? So very interesting. The owners of Good Earth now come and join us at Starbucks on Saturday mornings on the south side. Isn't that beautiful? And they had never been at Starbucks. So now they finally took a look at what the prices were. And I said, you should compare, you know, because Good Earth is very much a Calgary dominant, and they thought the brand was strong in Lethbridge. It took them years to build their brand, and they're wonderful people. Some of the best customer service people that I've ever met in Lethbridge work there. They're wonderful people. Do your research, be accurate. Don't go and pull it out of thin air, which I think our friend says here too. So there's a fit. In our first class, we had talked about the customer segments and what they're really trying to get done. So the real estate example is a great one. What the pain and gains are, and then what you're offering. And will it be enough that they'll buy it? So is there a good enough fit for you there? And then of course the canvas, and we try to break everything down into 9 areas here. And then when you start to get more specific with cash flow and what's behind the scenes by whatever your key resources are costing you, whatever your key activities are, and what your key partners are, and part of the value proposition or what you're actually making there. Those cost structures that you've got, you're starting to get them down into a cash flow. And cash flow is really important. It's king. You can survive if you've got strong cash and no profit. Really difficult if you've got strong profit and no cash. So strong profit is, wow, I did good on this house that I just built. But if you can't sell that puppy and it's on the market for a long time and you're having to pay significant interest on that house, how long can you wait before you're reducing the price to try to dump it on the market? And right now, I understand in the real estate business, there's a ton of houses on the market, surplus, and the home builders aren't quite as busy as they've been for many years now. So there's a decline in that. And it's tight on cash flow. A lot of these guys have had to buy property in advance, and they don't have that kind of cash. They have to borrow money on that. And so how many pieces of property can they hold on to? And then will anybody buy the property when they're trying to dump it? Or are they locked in with the developer and can't get rid of it? So that's part of the problem. So you've got to really watch out for what you're signing and what you're agreeing to. Things do go up and things do go down. So where Morley's talking about here is, you got the business model canvas. Are you ready to commercialize the idea? Have you gone out? Have you talked to customers? Have you got validation? And are they willing to invest in what you've got to offer in Southern Alberta? So are you ready to create some revenue from the business? So this is a standard, and I think this is in the package, Trigger Co, am I correct? This is part of the handbook materials and that as an example? I think so. So Trigger Co, this looks a little overwhelming for those people who have never done a cash flow, but we're gonna go through, we'll talk a bit about it, and we'll break it up a little bit as we go through, and we'll see how things fly. Bottom line is, there's two components, cash in and cash out. So anything that you're gonna collect money on, anything, you're gonna have to take it out of your system. It's as basic as that, but it's thinking about everything. So in this particular one, this cash in, they're selling a few things here. And they've got the 12 months here, and then they've got the startup, what they're putting into it to get some money into the account. It is no different than how you manage your money. So you get money coming in from, let's say you're working for an employer, and then you've got a gazillion expenses, house mortgages, oh my goodness, Shaw or Telus, all those beautiful people that take your money and you pay a month in advance for the services, everything that goes out. What do you have left at the end of the day? And are you able to put some away for savings? You know, in it, your car lease agreements and all this kind of stuff. It's amazing what we spend money on. And then you get sucked into the subscription part of life. Oh, it's just $10 a month. And another $10 a month. Oh man, my daughter says you should get on this particular software and you can have all the music you want. I said, sorry, I bought and paid these CDs and they're sitting in there and it's not as quick and I could download them and put them into my digital system. I'm too lazy. I don't mind getting that out playing. Oh, that's just slow and old, Dad. I said, yes, just like me. So you're just like personally, how you manage your personal bank account, your habits and how you keep track of things, basically will be the discipline you have in your business here. I always remember Bonnie Greenshields came up to me and she said, when I opened up Round Street Cafe, which is now Bread, Milk, and Honey, and I see they're extending their hours, they're going to be open 7 days a week now, from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, which is really cool. I'm blown away at their business. It's just crazy busy these days. The cold weather didn't bring them in at first. Now it's bringing them in for the warm soup down there, which is fantastic. But there, when Bonnie ran it under Round Street, she put a lot of stuff together, but she kept all the receipts and finally gave them to an accountant. And she says, son of a gun, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had known more about the costs of operation of a restaurant before I got into the business so that I could have managed it effectively. Okay? So, wonderful lady, had a great service there, retired out of the process, just a community person that we really appreciate in Lethbridge. So in this particular situation here, these people are selling a couple things, furniture and giftware, and of course they're over $30,000 in sales a year is what their projections are, and so they've got to set up for GST as well. And so every time that they're billing something, they've got a GST factor that they're adding to it. And then they are buying that furniture and giftware, so the cost of goods sold, that's how much it costs them, furniture and giftware. So they're selling in January $1,400 worth of furniture, and their cost of goods on furniture is $350. I don't know if it's accurate or not. Okay? I would study the industry and find out what the margin is on this kind of stuff. And if that's margin, that's pretty nice margin in my mind. So giftware, $1,500, and it costs them $697. Okay? Now, what's key about cash flow is this is the month that they actually paid or took money in. So they actually got the money, or they actually ended up paying out for things, which is different than some of the other financials that use an accrued accounting system. So that would be very, very important to consider. It's when those transactions actually happen, when you're going to collect on the money and when you're going to have to pay for it. There's an old story. Collect as fast as you can and pay as slow within your correct agreements as you can. Accountants have always said that. It drives me nuts because they're telling everybody, and I'm not getting my money from people any quicker because the darn folks are telling their clients that kind of thing. And then it's usually very advantageous if they're offering a discount to be able to take the discount. So if it's 2% the first 10 days of a month, that's a good thing to have as long as you've got the money to actually make it happen. That can drop some significant costs off of your purchases, okay? So then I'm always a margin guy. Show me the margins, show me the margin. And I'm not one who's a favorable guy when it comes to asking people, what's markup versus margin? So in my old industry, markup is how much you're gonna add to the cost. So let's say you go and you've got something that costs $50, you mark it up 100%, you're gonna sell it for $100, 100% markup on the cost of it. Yeah. Remember, it costs you 50 bucks. So if I sell it for 100, it costs me $50, I have a margin of $50. And by coincidence, that's 50% of my selling price because I use these particular numbers. Okay? I'm always interested in margin. Tell me what the margins are. In the software development industry, margins are around 80 to 90%. In my old industries, margins are significantly less than that. Because in the industry, when I often go to some of these trades guys, they think marking something up 10% is a lot of money. In the retail industry, it's not. In the food industry, it's not. You've got to mark it up to make yourself money. Otherwise, you're in too tight of an industry, and you're gonna do an awful lot of work for very, very little return. So if we took a look at Bonnie's type of restaurant, and I never saw her numbers, but if we took a look at Bonnie's restaurant, I merely Googled family restaurants, and the key was no alcohol. And what I found out is that for $100 in sales, they end up paying for food, they end up paying for labor, which is significant cost. And if you saw the news last night, the Restaurant Association is trying to send a message to the government people that that $15 is really killing a lot of those fine folks. So food and labor, and then you've got all of the costs of operating the restaurant, which are significant. Utilities a big bill, rent's a big bill. At the bottom line, profit before tax, I just put PBT, in this type of industry is a whopping $4.40 on food. Earl's has a steak dinner, and without the alcohol, they make $6.60 contribution on a steak dinner, okay? That's how low it is. You gotta do a tremendous amount of volume. If you're able to sell alcohol, the margins are significantly higher. So I was with a restaurant expert down in Dallas last September, and he said to me, he says, Bruce, what we do is we focus on getting them to give the food away for free and buy the booze. So that's where all the margin is. I thought, wow, only in America, right? Creative thought, creative process, very interesting. But I would study the industry very closely. So some people think there's a ton of money in these businesses, but as she said, she found out she went into it for the love and found out that it's not a gold mine. It's not a gold mine. So fortunately, that wasn't her objective. She wanted to do something cool as an experience, and she did that. So here, furniture, it gives you a pretty decent margin, and what I would include on this is percentages. So I want to be able to spot what the gross margin percentage is. In January, it's $2,056. I'd like to see that as to how it looks, okay? So the cash that comes in, the total revenue and stuff like that that is there, I like to see cash in, it's $11,464. Cash out is $5,250 for a cash balance of $6,214 in the process. So what we're going to do is go through and take a look a little bit more at the processes. So project monthly SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Everybody talks SMART. It's been 20 years of SMART talk, but When we look at some of these financials, there's not a lot of good talk on it. And then you'll find that there's patterns. And as Morley says, seasonality. So in this particular segment, you're going to start a business up, let's say, and you're going to find that your sales during the month of January, February, March are not that good, but you really hit it out of the park in July, and you're down in October. So you've got to average it out. And that's really, really important to understand when you're going to be busy and when you're not going to be busy. So when we're talking about the furnace guys being busy this month, they were dead in January. And I'm sure their business plans had them much busier in January. And so at the breakfast club this morning, one guy was saying, yeah, our service guys, they hate working out in the cold. They're working too hard in it. Should I come in closer? Oh, isn't this beautiful? And so I get a kick out of a little bit of cold weather, and it's really an industry thing. You've got to be there. You've got to be ready to be able to perform. But take a look at one of the businesses that I was in was commercial roofing. And if we look at January and we look at December, the roofing industry sales go like this. Except this January, they were higher than normal because the weather was so cool, so good, they could actually work in January. But this is the norm of when your sales take place. Okay? So something sort of like that. If I take a look at sales for furnaces, we've got January and we've got December here. Sales for furnaces peak right here. There are some here only because the equipment wore out. But we're doing it in October, November when that thermostat clicks. People say, oh, that box downstairs. And I was in a business that of the least things people wanted to buy, it was a darn furnace. Because they can't go and say, hey, have you seen our furnace lately? They'd rather show you their kitchen or how beautiful their house is on the outside and things of that nature. So it's a different game. Air conditioners are in May. Okay. So if it's stinking hot in May, people will say, honey, I can't put up with this heat. We need to get an air conditioner. We need to get an air conditioner. And that will stimulate them. If it's hot in July, they'll say, hey, we're going away for 3 weeks and we can get a fan from Costco. Okay? We can get a fan from Costco. So the buying habits, you've really got to understand the buying habits. So think about it. If you're in those businesses, you only have a few windows that you're really going to capture. Now, if you're in new home, great. You can be putting them in with new home as you're going along and stuff like that. But if you're just a repair guy and you're going when there's problems, it's only when that thermostat is on or off in the process. It's only when the thermostat. Now, from a cash flow perspective, we start doing the work and we have to get supplies. We start actually physically on the job. We have labor costs that we're incurring. So here's our material, here's our labor. And we start doing percentages and we start billing them at the end of each month. Problem is, they take 45 days to pay. So I'm having to pay for my materials and my labor well in advance of when I get paid by my customers. And if you don't have some kind of money in the pot to be able to help you in that process, you're in trouble. And let me give you an example. This is our sales. This is the pattern for our cash. Complete inverse relationship. We have lots of money at the beginning of the year because everybody's paid the bills off. We've stored it up. But then, as we start paying for all the bills and all the labor and stuff like that, and waiting for people to pay us, we actually suck cash. And when people say, you must be making a lot of money, well, yeah, it's tied up in accounts receivables. And we haven't seen it yet. And so they start paying it at the back half of the season. And then we have enough money in December. And we start the crazy process over and over again. So what will be your payment pattern? If you're a cash-based system, fantastic. So in Morley's case, you've got this red line that shows on average what it would be, but you really need to be careful and specific as to when it's going to happen for you. Someone who's a Santa Claus is very, very busy November 1st and dead on December 24th at 6 o'clock at night. They have a window of only this much. So think about your operation. When will you be busy and when won't you be? We'll find a number of people will give us business plans that show that sales from January to December are like this. It just doesn't work that way. Okay? When I was looking with the Lethbridge Herald and TV and stuff like that, TV often will sell you packages in the summertime. You gotta love technology, it's so limiting. And so the reality is they're selling it to you cheap then because just the readership's not there. Lethbridge Herald said to me, Bruce, in July 1st, that week, people go away on holidays with their kids. Then they go away usually the last week of July, first week of August, or the first 2 weeks of August. Not a lot of people around. I also found golf impacts, and I found my sales dropped as soon as the golf courses opened up. And then I regained them when everybody got off the golf course. But that's busy for the golf people, right? So think about your business. When will it be busy? And it's just not going to be stable like that, or your business isn't going to grow like this. It's going to end up going like this. That's more realistic. So when you're presenting this information to us, the more you've thought about it, the more you can talk about your customers and their patterns. The more knowledgeable you are, the more realistic it is. So it's an integral part of a realistic business plan. I think you all know cash is king. Without it, you only dream. And you need cash. So you've got wages and suppliers, no cash, no sales. You got a real problem. So if you don't have supplies and you're trying to sell things, you've got a problem. How are you going to borrow money? So a couple people put it on MasterCard at 20% interest to start off their process. And they did not even know what the volume of stuff that they were bringing in looked like. And they discovered what pallets were when these particular people that were going to start to build something and SKUs. And they bought from China and they bought from the United States. And they had no credit, so they put it on MasterCard. And that was just crazy stuff. So when the materials to start their project, start building their idea and stuff like that arrived, they filled some garages. I call them man caves. So that's when the family started to get emotional, I'm sure. Okay? And that can really hurt you. And you just don't want that to happen. You've got to think it out, and what are things going to look like? Envision what things are going to look like as you start to develop your business. You can start in your basement, but then as you start to grow, how are you going to manage everything? And that's what's important about the business model canvas. It gets you to think of the activities, the processes that you're going to use. In the restaurant business, man, you got to be in that business to really appreciate everything that goes on. I was talking to Jennifer Petrasic-Kolb, who is moving the YMCA from the south side to the west side. Think about this. Moving from 14 lifeguards to 120. Moving from 45 to 46 people to 250. Moving from 35,000 square feet to 250,000 square feet. Like, that's mind-boggling. You gotta have a project management system to be able to have that transition. And she's moving from one type of customer to a whole new West Side customer, right? 39,000 very fortunate people. There's us old grumpy Southsiders. I'm not driving over there. I'm not gonna go and use those services, that's too far, right? So you've gotta figure out your customer segment. I think it's gonna be amazing. The water park alone, they say, is unbelievable. But think about you're in her shoes. So how much money do you spend on gym equipment? Right? You got a 30,000 square foot area for gym equipment. So she was saying to me that they budgeted $1.3 million. But they didn't know if that was the right price. So they were smart enough to go and get a procurement person, who had bought YMCA equipment from otherwise down east. And that dude saved him $250,000 on those prices. She said, how do you know what quality of aquatic equipment should you get? We have no idea what works and what doesn't work. So they've done all of this research. They just didn't go on a whim They had to find all this stuff out. And so we had her come over to the university here, and some students in a project management class are undertaking a little bit of a task to appreciate. But she says the city owns the building, we're running the building. Who has access to the video cameras? Who has access to the security and security codes? All these little things that have to be thought out in such a big empire like that facility, which will be world class, of course. You know? So your little business, think about that. That's a big business. And then wonder, man alive, how many people are we actually going to get coming to this place? So they've gone out, they've searched otherwise of similar areas and stuff like that to get as best of metrics as they can. That's the work that they've done, just like the work you would do on your projects. So no wages, no, the reality check when sales don't come in when you're expecting. So profit versus cash. So building, determine your expenses. So on the sheet we had that. Establish the seasonality, we've talked about that, and then the capacity to deliver. If it's just you, and let's say you're doing a service business, the most you're going to do is a 12-hour day, right? When you're busy and you're having to be able to provide service to people. You can't do 24 hours. It'll kill you. So you're limiting how much you can possibly charge people just by the fact you're a plumber or whatever, and you're doing it on your own. Just by that alone. So if you have 2 people, don't double it, because things don't work that way. Okay? You won't be able to double your sales because you have 2 people, because you're going to manage more of the operation, and they'll be able to go out and do the work when you've got it set up. But son of a gun, when you hire an employee, they probably won't work on weekends for you. They probably won't want to be around on long weekends for you. All these, because they don't have the same ownership that you have in this particular business. And it frustrates people when they can't find the right person that's willing to have psychic ownership like you, but really, you're paying them on an hourly wage, they don't know the future of your business. How can you make it work for them if you bring capacity, if you bring people in? Market research, you've had a session on market research, I think, here, right? So I'm very serious. I see very, very little real market research being done. And I can Google anything just like you guys, and we can find a lot of stuff up. I was talking to a coffee shop the other day, and he said, this problem, that problem, this problem, that problem. I Googled, and in 10 minutes, I supplied him a complete manual on how to run a friggin' coffee shop. What's your problem, dude? It ain't that hard. There's so many of them out there now. And they even talked about the margins of their particular product, which is really a good thing to do. You'll be shocked at the number of businesses that I go to that don't know the margins on their product. And again, the margins are, what did you selling it for? What did you pay for it? Or how much did it cost you to make it? That's your margin, not the markup, the margin. And that's what all the bankers want to know. What are your margins? What are your margins? I shamefully have to tell you that in one of my business units, when we were not organized with proper cash flow and planning and stuff like that, for $100 of sales, we managed to get profit before tax of $1 in a high-risk business. It was unbelievable how stupid we were. Okay? Then we got organized, and we found out that good people in that area get $7. So I shouldn't put a negative sign there. $7 in that industry. That woke us up real quick. When we were finished with our cash flow and our planning and our marketing and things like that, we cranked it up to $20 profit before tax in an industry that was $7. As well, we were told by the banker that on our accounts receivables, the average is 45 days. At the time, in that one business unit, it was taking me 102 days on average to collect money. Ouch. I was borrowing like crazy. Back then, paid big interest, not like now. We got it down to 28 days by figuring out how to do things different in our organization. Okay? Had one service guy go over to somebody's house, and the person wasn't there, but the neighbor let them in. And he says, I'm here to do some stuff, da-da-da-da-da. The neighbor cut her own check and gave it to our guy.
Nice.
Right? That can happen to you. You know, the other thing is, when can you collect deposits and when can you get paid more timely? We got into a project that was millions of dollars, and we did not have it set up to be what we thought it would be based on all the information we were given. And what was very interesting about it is that typically we were saying we need to be paid in 30 days, but we have a problem. We can't finance our payroll and our suppliers while we wait for your check. They said, we'll pay you every 15 days because we need you. Every 15 days. So we had a check come in one day, and this was before current banking technology. It was worth about $850,000, came in on a Friday. We couldn't get it into the bank till Monday morning. Somebody broke into our place and busted our safe open on the Saturday night. I got there Sunday morning because we were working 7 days a week for the cause, and they had taken $300 petty cash out of this big double-doored safe. Of course, we had all the tools for them to break into because we were into a metal operation. And the police said, we'd like to take this check and check it out for fingerprints. And I said, really? What do you do to it? Well, our chemicals will destroy the check. I said, cash is king. We'll take the check, to heck with the guy who broke into our place, right? And so we deposited the money to keep that account going. But if we had not changed our terms of payment, we would have been out of business. We got into manufacturing a whole bunch of oil and gas equipment, $1 million type units, right? And we didn't want to fund those fine folks, so they said, we need your services, so we will make payments as you build these particular units, and at the end, they owed us 10% when it left our facility. So we took pictures, they came down and inspected, they were happy with the progress we had made on it, so they were paying us. But it's those dialogue and discussion you must have with customers up front. You're doing something for them, you're giving them value. The money should not be the issue at the end of the game. You won't want all customers. There's some good ones and some bad ones. At first, you'll want to have to take some of the bad ones on, but be very attuned to them. So even when they say, got no money, get something out of them. If they owe you $1,000, get some checks post-dated, $250 a piece. Get something out of them. Never hang up. The skill of collecting money. If you've got somebody like a spouse that's very good at it, let them do it. You know, I found people that were good at it in our workplace, and they were worth a lot of money to us. They actually enjoyed it. So,
Can I just ask, are you willing to go another 15 minutes? If we take our break at 7:45, will you be okay?
yeah.
How much more material do you
It's
have?
these people.
Can we go an extra 15 minutes before we take our break? Everybody okay? Good.
Union hours.
I love the examples, but it takes longer when we do examples.
Union hours. So funny, eh? In this business, you think and act and think all the time. You're tuned on 24/7. If you're not there, your heart's not there. Okay? But I can't work for anybody else. I love doing what I'm doing. I'm not one who can be told by somebody else what to do. That just drives me wild. So that's in my ink. So again, we did talk about it, but we're putting it here again. So you've got your sales revenue projections, capacity to deliver for the year, and validate. I'll give you some other examples. I remember when Al Ansel ran Penny Coffee House. He said to me, Bruce, I make X number of dollars per seat per hour. So he had to figure out how much he made. And then when it got taken over and there was some plugs put in and the concept of laptops arrived, I have a hunch that those numbers changed. Because there are some people that will sip on something for a long time and use that facility to do their studies or do their reading. I saw some people playing chess in there the other Sunday. I thought, wow, that's cool. That costs them for that. And I hope they're bright enough people to take more than one lousy drink, because it gets darn expensive. So working out, if you're in a restaurant, how much it costs to have that, how much your revenue is, it's a different way of looking at things. Break it down to units and total costs. So think about, okay, how much revenue do I have to generate from every table or every seat in that place? So I go to many restaurants and I'm always interested in how many turns they do. So at nighttime, how many turns? And restaurants suck on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Pick up on Thursday. You can't get into them on Friday, and Saturday can be a disaster too. So they have a short window. It's not a perfect sales. So some of them will offer cheap pass to Tuesdays and things of this nature to try to draw a different segment of people into their organization. You've got to be creative that way. How can you use your resources effectively? Very, very important. Some restaurants like the Keg used to be open at lunchtime. They shut down at lunchtime because the research that they did is that they were taking out of the crowd that would normally show up at nighttime, and lunches were cheaper. They would rather have the people at nighttime paying the dollars for the bigger meals than having them potentially just going at lunchtime and losing them. So strategies are all there in your different businesses. What's yours all about? And then out, we call it variable expenses, but it's an expense that you incur when you are selling something. So for example, the furniture. If you're not selling any furniture, you haven't bought any furniture, there's no expense to it. Fixed expenses, on the other hand, are the ones that you've signed your life away or are linked to in some form or fashion. So rent is a classic. You've signed an agreement for a period of time and you're committed to it. Whether you're selling something or not selling something, you're stuck with that. So typical month, revenue will be made, so you'll sell something out, you've got your expenses, and then you've got some cash balance. So how does it change on a month-to-month basis? So you add all those factors as to when you're popular, when you're not popular. I've always been fascinated by chocolates. It shows. Bernard Callebaut, right? Think about it. They do really good today and tomorrow. Really good. They do really good at Christmas. They do good on Mother's Day, right? So think about the holidays that chocolate operation is. And you'll see that they've got to peak and make sure they've got enough inventory to handle all of that capacity during those periods of time. Whereas during the summertime, probably not so much. I haven't studied it closely, but not so much. Think of the margin that's on their chocolates. Very good. Now, from a stable perspective, Cadbury Chocolate will tell you that the chocolate business is recession-proof. That people will buy chocolates in low times and high times. Because for Cadbury, it's priced right that people can still afford that affordable little luxury even when times are down. Okay? Now, I won't say that might be the case with Callebaut's because they're priced at a wholly different rate with some fine quality in it and things of that nature. But think about yours. Is it something that people will take during a booming economy and a down economy? New houses, not so much on a down economy. What's going to sell in a down economy? Used houses. Right? So think about that market cycle. You go to Calgary right now with, what do they say, 29% empty office space downtown Calgary? They're having to rethink and reinvent what that space can be used for. What a neat opportunity. And it's not as if Calgary is the first. I'm sure they're researching around the world to see what's worked elsewhere. So what's your research? Are you looking? I often say, United States is 10 times bigger. It's probably being tried there. Hone in on it. Find the websites, talk to the people, and find out about what they're offering and what's worked for them. They'll tell you because you're non-competitive. You live in something called Canada, right? So don't be afraid. In my business, I would always go to my competitors in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and I'd take my staff there to show them how they were doing it better than me. Okay? We went to Centennial Heating in Saskatoon. We were a service company. We had 5 trucks at the time, and we grew up to 12. He had 27 service vehicles. When we pulled in the parking lot, they were all uniformed. They were all identical. They were McDonaldized. Smart. Our folks saw it and go, whoa. We could have heard you talking about it, Bruce, but we wouldn't have listened. By seeing it with other people. Great stuff. Okay? So fixed expenses, rent, utilities, telephone, internet, see all these things that you're fixed about, wages and benefits, unless they're a variable cost and you can lay them off at a moment's notice. Harder to do these days. Drawings, money you're going to take out of the business if you're not incorporated. The insurance costs. Just in my little consulting, I pay $3,000 in insurance. right? Comes out every month. I staggered. I don't want to pay my insurance company, and I'm having to pay a premium for that luxury of having it staggered. Advertising, bank charges. Man alive, bank can get you. Loans, so what are you having to pay? So if you're borrowing money from community futures, you're paying principal and interest. That's cash going out. Don't think it's just the interest. You've got to get rid of the principal. It's often blended in a lot of the deals that you do. Keep it separate in your mind for accounting purposes, but it's still cash going out. So loans, repair and maintenance. Don't underestimate on repairs and maintenance. It's usually much higher than you think. Okay? I just found out I got to do $3,200 worth of work on my vehicle. Say what? It's a $114 part. They have to drop the engine to replace it. 25 hours of labor they're assessing me. I'm going, you gotta be kidding me, right? So that's enough stimulus to look elsewhere. Office supplies, amazing what Staples has. I was over at Southland Welding. Oh, geez.
Sorry, I mean, I love his examples, but I gotta cut him because he's got it. You've got a lot of stuff to cover.
Vehicle costs a lot. Isn't it beautiful to have somebody, right? So when do your customers want to do business with you? You track that out and do estimates and search and find out when typically it is considering weather, okay? Cash in. List the cash in that you will be receiving in your business. Determine what variable expenses you'll have. So if you have furniture and giftware and stuff like that, what is it? If you're opening up a cannabis shop, it's going to be the cannabis product. And I'm sure the Alberta Gaming Commission, is it, that's running it, they'll be wanting cash right then and there. You're going to pay them instantly. And then they'll ship, I'm sure. And then cash out. So here's a bunch of your fixed costs that you've got in it. So nice sheet to fill out. Do it for 1 month, and then you can replicate it for several months. But when we find these cash flows that people do for the competition, it's just copy it all straight across. And then they'll play difference with some of their sales numbers, and so some months will look stronger than the other, but it hasn't been thought out well. Put a description. What are your assumptions? What are your guesses? What do you think? When are people going to be buying from you? Tell us about it so we understand what your business is all about. Downtown Waterton. They're busy from the 1st of May until the end of August long weekend. They have to make it or break it then. The hotel that's there, interesting. They got to be creative to get people in. So weddings and things of that nature. Think about your business. When will you be able to do it? And what's your capacity to deliver at 100%, 75%, or 50%? How much time? So as a consultant, typically I've got 2,080 hours a year if I want to work 52 weeks, 40 hours a week. Okay? So if I break it down, typically consultants can bill out 1,100 hours if they've got their act together. The other time is finding the work, getting tools, getting educated on it. As an accountant, I have to put in PD hours every year, and it has to be verifiable. So that all costs money. Have you included it? As an accountant, I have to pay about $1,100 a year for my dues to the CPAs. Okay? All adds up. Right? If you're a project management professional, PMP, you're paying them $500 a month. So all the tools. So I use computers quite a bit. I have printers at home rather than fancy cars. And that's where my money goes to be able to put it into things. So you've got to think about what will be your capacity to be able to deliver. Very rare that somebody can possibly be 8 hours a day, full tilt, 40 hours a week. Now, I was very interested in the service business because dentists and that.
I'm sorry, I don't like doing this to you.
Okay. Validate. So get the research, go to the market. Is it big enough for you? Most important, what's the potential? Don't think you'll get the whole market. You're going to get a fraction of it and have to build. Okay? Benchmarking tools are available. This is the Government of Canada. And you can find a lot of industries there, and it'll give you an idea. That's how I found out my one, that the average profit before tax was 7%, right? You get these, they get these slides, right?
They get these slides.
That's cool, super. Pet peeves that we see. Okay, so this is our knee injury guy. Failure to validate any assumptions. If you haven't validated and I'm a judge, I throw it out. It's just, don't give me song that. I can put it together in a room in a night too, right? Complete the guesswork. So get past that, validate. Not paying yourself. So putting something together and saying, yeah, I'll pay myself out of the profits really sucks to bankers. Put your wages in there, okay? So yes, often it takes a number of years to really make some good coin. But if you're not paying yourself now, you're on a hope and a wish. You're just in an industry that doesn't have the metrics for you to even be working in it. It's a tough call. Okay? So bankers really snarl at people who don't pay themselves. Not understanding when the money actually comes in and when it goes out. And as I've said tonight, it often comes in long after it's gone out. So know that. Seasonality. Unrealistically high salaries and dividends. Well, when I'm doing the research, I'll go compare to industry to see if you're legit or not. We take it very seriously. I don't want to be conned. I had one, oh boy, better not do that.
You only have 5 minutes, I'm sorry.
How many more slides?
I don't know, you're gonna have to wing it.
No way.
This could be a whole night, I know.
There's a guy who had an idea in the home building, okay? When I did the research, only 2% of houses in the high-end houses even wanted what he was gonna offer in Lethbridge. So I did the research in Lethbridge, and at the time, 850 houses were being built.
No,
Okay.
left.
Not many left, right? 16 houses would require if everybody took it from him. What a joke. He needs to be in a multi-million population for his services with very, very high-end houses, not the ones around here, to really take the idea that he had. So it made no sense, right? And he had an accountant help him put the numbers together, but they never did the market research. So planning to purchase equipment, etc., out of cash, boy, that's dangerous because you got an operating cash pool that you've got to use in order to deal with the time frames of when you're getting money in and when you're having to send it out. So if all of a sudden you buy a big truck and use that money, you're SOL. You can't do that. You just don't have the money. I had a guy who was in business for 8 years come and see me the other day. He says, Bruce, I messed up. I bought everything new. Way bigger, way fancier than I needed, but boy, did I have nice looking vehicles. Great, he's out of business because he wasn't frugal. Be frugal. That word disappeared about 20 years ago in our business world. Be frugal. Don't think because you're out of business, you can drive a luxury car now and lease it. No. That better be very, very efficient. My friends at AirTech, when they started their business, they used their pickup trucks, their own ones, not buying equipment to keep things going. Cash is king. Be frugal. Keep the spouses and the kids out of the game. Recognize that you're going to have to wait a while to make it successful. So I need a cash flow injection, pet peeve. So that's always a classic. You get going and then you run out of money. And I had a guy literally crying in an office the other day because he was absolutely broke. And he was begging for money and I couldn't help him. I didn't think he was coachable either. He was so set in his ways. If you're stubborn, watch out because it can kill you. I'll just increase sales and decrease expenses. Well, I do want you to increase sales and decrease expenses, but do you know how? And is it feasible in the marketplace that you're in? Okay? Complete the spreadsheet, so this stuff's found. So this is the Trigger Co. one. So again, cash in, cash out. In this particular one with the startup, they show a loan. They show some other financing for $100. They show that you have some existing cash you're putting into it of $7,800. So they start with $37,408 and they go and buy a bunch of inventory. Already, just to set up, they've spent $28,000. Now, in a lot of years, you'll have leasehold improvements, and they can be significant. Anytime somebody starts to renovate something, you know, in your house, it's going to be 50% more than you planned. Don't believe that it'll get done when you think it's going to get done. And I'll give you a case in point. Jennifer Perkasic Kolb opened up a playground place in Lethbridge Center. I want to say play school, but I'm going to make a mess of it. It's on the 2nd floor. On the roof, they built a fencing unit to have a playground outside, which I think is pure genius. Happens in big centers, but not in big Raymonds, right? But They were expected to open September 1st. They opened 2 weeks ago. And they had the staff aligned and the staff trained. But the contractors, she said, I don't get it. How come a plumber and an electrician can't work hand in hand on the same facility at the same time? How come I can only core through a roof on a Sunday and there isn't a subcontractor around that'll work on a Sunday to core the concrete roof, to be able to put the fence posts in, to put the mesh around it, right? She ran into all these unexpected problems. It's not a clear path. Well, I hope she had the money in place, maybe the future's helped out, in order to make that happen. She's a beautiful lady, smart as all get out. One of the best people I've got in Lethbridge here, just really on top of it. But a whole bunch of crap happened. They found out the roof was rotten. So if you look now, there's a crane there re-roofing the roof on that Lethbridge Center piece. Like, oh my goodness. It just cascaded. And make sure you got things straightened out with the city of Lethbridge before you start making a bunch of changes. Because sometimes it's zoned a certain way. And that can happen. We had one client that signed a 5-year lease, and they grew up and this is terrible.
Skip two, go to the one, well, how will you manage your cash flow? Skip, and say, never let your cash go to zero. That's a good one.
She's an accountant. Always build a buffer in your cash flow that you want to have. And in my world, I always want to have $100,000 cash flow to my business all the time. But that's the size of my business. In some cases, you say, might want $5,000 cash flow all the time. You'll know what your transactions and your costs are each month. So you never want to be zero because of that timing factor. Discounts for early payment, I said, would be a win, especially with today's interest. Pay when you have to, but not any further in advance. They don't love you. You have computers assessing it. They're not going to do anything. Watch prepaid expenses. Okay? Make sure you've got control of your prepaid expenses when you have to pay out, and always keep track of them. So when you give up on something, if you don't remember, they've got free cash from you too. Purchase equipment from profits or plan. So it's out of your profits that you can buy the equipment. Or get the financing so that it's separate from your operating loan. Don't get those mixed up. Keep accounts receivables timely, 15 days. That would be great. Go for it. I could only get it down to 28 days, but that was my type of industry. If you've got a cash business, fantastic. Credit cards, fantastic. Implications of extending credit, don't. Sorry, be very careful. Get something in writing, my goodness. Oh, I got stories of that. To ensure loan payments, always make sure you're making loan payments. Don't think you can miss one. My daughter thinks that way. Don't do that. No, Dad, I just missed payment. Say what? Are you serious? That's dangerous trouble, you know? I can see myself co-signing when I'm 102 years old. Determine how much to borrow. So through your cash flow, you'll determine. I would suggest you do 3 cash flows. Best case, most likely case, and worst case. 3 cash flows. Because we're all too darn optimistic. You're going to give me your best case. Tell me that you've really thought through it and that you know what can happen. AirTech, when they started their business, gave ATP 3 scenarios. These guys were investing their life in starting a new business, and they wanted to know the downside of it. So they ran the numbers. They were still profitable, even on the downside of it, right? So think about that. Many businesses crash due to poor cash planning. I think I've told you the story.
No story.
Sorry?
Sorry, no story.
Well, sorry. Managing your cash flow is a key to a successful business, you think?
Hey, everybody, I know there's still a few people out there come back in, and I really appreciate the time that these past CEC winners are giving us tonight by coming and answering your questions. And really, you give Bruce more time to speak. So, no, I love his stories, I really do. So we have Sarah from Lethbridge Tactical, and Stephanie and Jonathan from Full Circle Plastic. They were the winners of the technology stream last year. I don't remember what year you were. 2012. You know, it goes a time ago. And Whitney from Peak Tide. What was your year? I should look.
2011.
Okay. So ask them anything you want. Ask them tips, tricks, whatever. Examples of the best this or the worst that. Great. great. And Zoomers, I hope you're back in. I'll go sit down for your questions. If people would go to the wired mic to ask extensive questions, like if you just have a couple of words, we'll repeat it before we answer it. But if you have a long question, please go to the wired mic. Thank you.
Can you guys just give a summary quick of what your businesses are?
Yes.
Sure.
Sharon, you want to start?
Okay, so we own, me and my husband own Lethbridge Tactical Supplies. So we're a retail store, and we provide uniforms and outdoor equipment to first responders primarily. So police, fire, EMS, and it also transitions quite well to the outdoor hunting, hiking industry.
My wife and I, we own a plastic manufacturing facility. So we use 100% recycled plastic, locally sourced, and build plastic lumber, different products.
Can everybody hear okay? He's awesome. Yeah, that was a technology winner last year.
And his spouse is an accountant.
Woohoo! Bonus, right?
She wasn't going to reveal that.
And I own a company called Pink Tie Events. So we do wedding and event decorating and planning, basically.
Okay, since it's so quiet, could you start with a tip? Just something that you think you discovered after the fact that these guys would really appreciate knowing now.
Oh, so many things.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the stuff that you think you know at the very, you're like so excited and you're ready to go into your business, and then you start making mistakes, and it's how you're learning from the mistakes. My biggest thing is to be creative when you have an issue. When something comes up, think outside of the box. Trying to save money, dealing with competitors, dealing with suppliers. Always, try to come up with a solution maybe that other people wouldn't have thought of. One thing I can think of is we broker our own goods. So when we import inventory, almost everything that we bring in is from the US. That's just kind of the way that our industry is. Instead of having it brought in and using a broker and paying the brokerage fee, which is sometimes it's 20% of your invoice just for the brokerage fee. Sweetgrass is an hour away. So once or twice a month, I actually go down to the border and broker my own stuff. So thinking outside of the box, coming up with innovative solutions can really help you save money and make you just different from your competitors.
Yeah, that's what we learned. Is it just forces you to think outside the box, come up with different ideas.
Okay, wait, they're shy, so go for it.
Sure. I don't think I have like a tip or a trick, but one thing that I'm realizing lately with my business is making sure that you take time to focus on being a business owner and working on your business, I guess, as opposed to working in your business. And I think especially at the beginning and even a few years in, you get really caught up in being an employee of your business and doing the day-to-day things and not actually taking the time to focus on your business and think about some of those thinking out of the box things. And I think just even scheduling it, whether it's an hour a day or a couple hours during the week, I think it's important to put that in your calendar. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And you're just going to look up one day and look for some direction as an employee, and you're not really sure how to direct yourself.
True, we've heard that before. It's a great tip. What do you think? Oh. Yeah.
So why do you guys each feel that you won? What specifically did you do differently compared to everybody else competing? What specifically do you think that you did to make you win, to make you successful? So that
your business plan was
yeah,
best.
like why do you feel, what did you do to make it so good and solid? What was the most important factor, I guess, in your business plan? We'll break it down that way.
I think a strong point, we were a 2.5-year-old business when we we're close to 2 years old when we did the CEC. I think a lot of it is we took steps. We actually proved some of our market research. So to do everything in 8 weeks is quite challenging. We actually had time, we had taken steps, and we had time to actually prove our market research.
True. And we have some existing businesses too.
Yeah.
I think for us, at least in my opinion, Bruce could probably answer this better than anybody because he was judging us all.
He was judging.
Yeah, us too. But I think for us, it was number one. It was a little bit of a differentiation, being different. We're not just a retail store. And a lot of people say, "Well, you're just a retail store. You're just a retail store." We knew our customers. We knew our customers inside and out. My husband's in law enforcement. We asked the questions. We asked the questions. We talked to our future customers. We found out what they want, what's working, what wasn't working, and then we worked for them. We didn't just open a store and sell them stuff. We tried to do the value-added services. Value-added services and differentiation, I think, is what put us over the top. Yeah.
I don't really know for sure.
Bruce?
Yeah, like everyone that we were, I guess, competing with were quite different businesses than what we do. And still, I think there's not a lot of businesses around that actually do what we do. And I think one of the things, a couple of things we focused on was sustainability, like how is the business going to run if you're not there to run it yourself? And then also we delved a lot into research. We were only 6 months old, so we didn't have a lot of that test market testing. We also didn't have a lot of experience in the industry either. So I don't think it was either one of those things. I would like to think that we did a ton of research, put that all into our business plan, little things, on the financial side, like even thinking about replacement costs on, I do rentals of inventory. So thinking about how much it's going to cost you to replace those things in the future and stuff like that. So
that's actually a really good point. That was one of my other tips too, is always think about the what if. And we are always thinking about what if. What is the most important part of my business? For example, for me, it's my suppliers. What if my suppliers stop selling to me? I got to look at alternative suppliers, but always what is the one thing that could cause your business to fail? Make sure you have a backup plan if that were to happen. Plan B. Always worst case scenario. And nobody likes to think about it, but having that worst case scenario, what's it going to be? Whether it's I've borrowed, so even when we're borrowing money, we borrow money, but then I always make sure, okay, I know exactly what I would have to sell my inventory at just to repay the money I've borrowed. Always keeping that in the back of your mind.
Bruce, would you mind answering that with regard to what sets someone out differently above?
Well, I think these answers have been fantastic, is that they got out of, as we would say, get out of the building and talk to people. So look at the relationships that were established, right? That's fantastic to know and build that relationship, because so many things are commoditized. You can go online and buy all the stuff, but what separates you? And it's building that relationship that's fundamental. In Whitney's case, when did you start? I can't remember what year.
2011.
2011. What was absolutely amazing is the publicity that they got. Man, they were in the paper all the time. I don't know how you got in the paper.
High advertising costs, did you know?
Ashley had some connections.
No bribe. Connections, right? But it was, the duo became well known, and nobody knew of anybody else. And that was very, very cool on their part. Very, very cool. So they really got that exposure. Now, I imagine the foundation's established there, so you've got lots of repeat customers. They were very giving to give to a lot of things.
Still do, not as much.
Right? And to get that exposure. But giving it, that was having to do things often free or for less in order to build that market, that trust, that relationship. When it comes to tactical, your pricing. How did you determine your pricing in relationship to others in the game?
And that was one thing that I know we had talked about. We never compete on price, but we are always scanning our environment and watching what our competitors are doing. For example, I know one of our biggest competitors in Calgary, they're 15% higher than us because they offer everybody a 15% discount. But we're aware of that. We are not going to be the cheapest. We don't want to be the cheapest because that's not who we are. We are not afraid to be at the higher end of the budget because our whole thing was high end. We don't want guys. I mean, actually, if you look at some of our customers, They actually spend less with us, they buy from us less often than they had to with their previous suppliers, but they don't have to replace it, and that's actually better. So we're higher price. They only have to buy from us once every few years, but we didn't want to be that cheap version that they were having to come in every 6 months, and we didn't want to be that way. So we were always actually not necessarily a cost leader. We're fine being at the higher end quality.
They're complaining about me, so I'll get closer. Bruce, I don't know if you ever judged the technology stream, but could you give us some tips about what makes someone stand out in the technology stream?
Interesting. I think the strength is that you validated the market. So you guys won technology last year. Okay, think about it. They were in business. They were functioning. They did a business plan, and it obviously convinced the judges. And for Bill Halley, one of the judges, to be convinced, he did a great job, because he can't be fooled easily. And so it is understanding that product and proving that there is a market for it. So I never got to see theirs. I was judging the general stream last year, but they had some interesting competition with some very cool ideas, but theirs, I think, was very foundational. Is that a fair comment to make? Yeah.
One thing we found, well, we were in the middle of doing a major pivot. When we found something, when we ran into something that didn't work, we were forced to change. And that was, there were times we ran out of money, and where if I had an extra $1 million, I would have spent a lot more money to figure out what I had to figure out. And that's where in the last year, we were actually going through it at the same time as we were doing CEC. 50% of our business we outsourced, and we didn't think anyone would do what we're doing, and we thought we had to do it. The last year, through contract, we got it done cheaper than our goal number that we were trying to do it for, and outsourcing it, and it's been amazing.
Was it quality work? Was it work that you felt?
Yes, it was the worst of our work that we
didn't want to do?
The most trouble we had with employees, equipment, everything. And so being able to outsource it, and right now we have probably 7 different municipalities throughout Alberta doing that for us.
Wonderful. And didn't you change your sort of target market partway through too? Like, am I wrong, maybe?
Our target market is a moving
Yeah.
target.
So could you speak to that a little bit, so that, you start with one thing and, you learn that you need to switch?
So let me think here. We had about 20 different products we were building, and we focused on one specifically. And it really helped us this last year. Right now, we're having to pivot. We had, my main customers are aluminum manufacturers, forming systems, and that market right now is a little soft, and so we're pivoting once again. But when that market bounces back, we're ready to pivot back just as fast. So.
But isn't that great? Bruce, you can speak to that too. I mean,
Fantastic.
You start off, you've got your MVP, and then you realize, okay, we'll do this one. Okay, there's not a lot of market in that, so let's do this. So you've got to be flexible, I guess, when you're starting your business.
We're trying, yes.
Whitney, can you speak to having employees and the challenges, and Sarah can too?
Yeah, so
Planning and
yes.
legislation.
I'm sure Sarah can a little bit more. I only had employees for a very short period of time at the very beginning of our business, so I can speak to my experience as far as that. Originally, our business plan for my business partner and I, who's no longer part of the business, was for us to keep our full-time jobs and then to have employees basically run the store, which was a terrible idea because we had no idea even what our business was. Like, we just started. So 6 months in, we realized really quickly we can't have other people running our business when we don't even really know what our business is yet. So I think we made a bit of mistake in that decision. We also hired some friends, which also was a big mistake. You know, learning, you learn as you go along. And then also, for me personally, like now I'm in a position where I could hire employees again if I wanted to. I sort of chose not to though. And that's just my personal decision. And sometimes it gets to be like, as a small business owner, how much work are you putting into, you know, filing all the paperwork, finding employees, hiring them, training them, leaving, and there are lots of things as far as that goes as well. So I don't have as much experience as far as employees as I think lots of people do, and that's also my choice at this point. So yeah.
Sarah, do you?
Yeah, employees are probably one of the hardest issues that we have. For the first 2 years, I literally did everything in the business by myself. I ran the store, I ordered, I did the accounting, I did literally everything, which was good because I knew that business, I know my business inside, I know every single aspect of my business. But you can't work on your business if you're working in your business. So the tips I can give you for employees is, number one, don't underestimate how much they cost. It's not just the $15 an hour or the $20 an hour. Those employee portions of taxes are huge. They add up really, really quick. So make sure your employees are making you money. If they're not making you money, you don't need them, or you're just wasting money. So that's probably my biggest tip. Second, make sure you have a employee handbook. Make sure you have a training manual. Don't even think about hiring somebody unless you have something, a plan on how you're going to train them, what you're going to train them, what they're going to do, because otherwise they're gonna stand there and not do anything. You think they know what they should be doing, but they don't know what they should be doing, and it gets really, really, really complicated. We were lucky enough to have a diamond in the rough manager for 5 years who just left us last year and totally uprooted everything because everything was going so good, and then he left and we had to start back at square one again. And in the retail world, it is really, really hard to find good employees. So it's, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of waiting, but yeah, having those manuals and stuff is really important.
Can I just say one other thing about the employees? So I did actually work for the government before I started my business, and specifically in payroll and GST. Maybe you guys talked about this before, but I have run into lots of situations, people that I know that start a business and then they hire employees, but they don't necessarily think about like the remittances as far as payroll, GST. Like you have to be filing that stuff monthly or quarterly, depending on, and you get like 6 months down the road and you haven't filed, it's hard to make that back
It's like
up.
$10,000s of dollars.
So just make sure beforehand you know what you're supposed to be filing as far as Canada Revenue Agency and stuff like that too. Super, super important. High interest.
That was your one tip.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, good. Devin?
What is one thing that you guys feel you should have worked more on your plan? Once you had it submitted and rolling and you're like, dang, I should have put more effort into this area. I greatly screwed that up. Or you guys just all did it.
No, For us, and I know, and it's actually one of the things I got dinged on is competition. What I thought was my competition wasn't my competition at all. I really misguided or misjudged, I guess, where my competition was going to be coming from, and how I was going to react to that competition. So doing a little bit more research, because the thing, it was easy for me to go and talk to my customers, but I didn't know how to research my competition, and I probably should have done a little bit more into that, so you actually know what you're up against.
Can you elaborate more on like your example?
I basically said, actually, I think I remember Bruce digging me on this because I said, I don't have any competition, and he laughed at me. And it is true. Well, the difference was there's always competition, but our competition really is online. And I didn't even put that into my plan. Our competition was going to be online, and now that we've been around for 7 or 8 years, everybody, I can almost guarantee everybody here has online competition, and that is going to be huge. So make sure that ends up in your plan.
Okay, so for me, I think that one of the things that we didn't really think about as much with the plan is it being realistic. So as far as, I think when you start out as an entrepreneur, you have really big dreams and really big goals and hopes, and you want to, display all that in your business plan, and you want to say like, so we also, we're like, maybe we can start this business in Lethbridge, but then we want to franchise, and we sort of focused on that in our plan. And again, it was Bruce that I think, kind of said, well, why do you want to franchise? Like, is that just the entrepreneur dream? And we had to kind of go back and think about it. And he sort of pointed out to, or maybe focus on expanding your business horizontally. So expanding into other types of business that complement the business you're already doing. So if you're getting a customer in one for weddings, for example, well, maybe we expand into lighting. Maybe we expand into something we can sell that customer that we're already getting. So I think that kind of brought us back down. Like, I think, and we were young, and we were, and everybody has those Shark Tank, Dragon's Den dreams. And I think we should have been a little bit more realistic in our business plan, and especially now being 8 years later, I realize that.
Hindsight is 20/20.
Jonathan, what about you? Did you have some worries after?
We underestimated what it would take to actually get the sales. My customers are throughout South America, and a couple business trips a year, we can handle that, right? And but then we decide, okay, let's do a couple of trade shows. Well, we had a holiday booked, and the trade shows end up either side of the holiday. Well, I had a project I was doing for Canada Winter Games this year, and it got postponed. Now I was gone for 4 weeks in a row. Well, I got 4 kids, and I'm trying to run a business, and I showed up 1 to 2 days a week for 2 out of the 4 weeks in a row, and yeah, you just lose touch. And so just you're wearing every hat. You're like I had in July, same thing. Went on a business trip, came back, and I find out one of my guys off on a workman's comp claim. He broke his foot. And it was totally a fluke accident, no paperwork filled out, no nothing. I wasn't there to do it, right? And so you're constantly jumping back and forth from, oh, you're gonna do sales. Well, that's all fine and dandy until the plant needs you because there's a breakdown. You're the only one who knows how to fix it, and so it's hard to stay with any plan when you're constantly, but to have that plan up there is important. Just to have something to go back to, and I think if you need to change it, don't be so glued on that plan that you're not going to pivot from it.
Bruce, could you maybe take Devin's question? What areas do you feel are the weakest in some of the plans?
It is knowing how it's going to operate and what the costs of operation are. It is, do you really know your customers? And do you have a connection with them? It's much like that spa treatment we showed on video. How easy will it be to access people? I had a lot of competitors who wanted to be able to expand their business, but they had no credibility with government and institutional connections. We dominated that market for many, many years. But what happened to us was Klein went and cut back in 91, 92. So we would have all this institutional work. When he cut the improvements on all of this government assets, I was now dealing with 1,500 residential people instead of 25 government people. And that was a big, big change to us. We were laying people off in June when it should have been our peak time, right? So that's, I think it's all about people. So you hear the commitment and passion by all these folks. You hear the challenges they have about hiring people. How can you sustain the people in the process? Because 5 years, I remember him, he's an ace dude. He knew the industry, he came from the industry, sorry.
No, I know, you know what I'm talking about. No, and that's the one thing, is finding employees that, you know, I hired this guy, 0 sales experience, never used a computer. He called his iPhone his texting machine. Like, he knew nothing about technology. He was an older gentleman, but he was a retired jail guard. Bingo.
And
I hired
fit.
And fit and passionate, and he worked because he wanted to work. He didn't work because he had to work. He worked because he wanted to work. He was literally a diamond in the rough. So when hiring somebody, it was not necessarily, there's skills you can train and there's skills that you can't teach people. And it's the skills that you can't teach people that you want. Because I taught him the computer. I taught him, he learned, like, that is who you should be looking for. And I think that probably goes almost industry wide, that it's what you can't teach them that is gold.
I was just talking to a guy the other day, and he's in the company that he's been working for. This guy's going to university, taking 4 courses. He's an international student. He's paying 3 times what we pay in tuition, right? And he's working 40-hour work weeks at a facility, and they've now told him that he's going from 10 hours to 12 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Without any discussions, you folks now shall work, right? Now he's sleeping in my classes. He's burnt, right? He's burnt out. And that's the way you tick employees off. You have to be open on communication. You have to build trust. And if you can get psychic ownership like you had for the 5-year guy, that's liquid gold. Never, ever underestimate that, and always appreciate it. Recognize and reward people for it. Think about yourself. How do you want to be treated? And treat the people the way you want to be treated when you're an employee. It's so simple. Yet I'll go see so many people that are starting up, and they're going to treat the people like scum. Are you serious? What did you learn yourself? You never ever gave your employer who treated you like scum any service. Why would you possibly do that to people who are now working for you? I'll give you an example. I was with some people. Sorry, Penny.
My online person is next, but go ahead.
These folks have employed somebody for quite a few years, and they let him go. He's now got a lawyer, and the lawyer's saying, hey, you owe us a month for every year. Okay? Woo. They didn't think a person of that qualification qualified for that. Now they're paying a bunch of lawyers. Why didn't you talk to this person and have dialogue and discussions with them rather than pull a trigger like that? I maintain that a lot of places management has not grown up over the last 25 years. We haven't grown up, we haven't matured. And so as a result, we're our own worst enemies. Look in the mirror when you have people problems and figure out what's the root cause. Look in the mirror. When I had my managers, I distributed mirrors to them all. Okay. Let's check it out here, right, first, and then go and say what's unfair.
You said you had an online
Well, I don't think
question.
you've got a true answer, but I think your true answer was
Yeah.
work more on the pieces with relationships,
have another
costs,
question.
exactly.
You said you had an online question.
Yes, I do. Sophie is saying, it sounds like a lot of you, so the Beekmans and Sarah and your husband, have family relationships. Can you please give us some tips how to work with these relationships and stay healthy?
Oh, there you go, you two.
Let's do Stephanie.
Let's do
Yeah.
I guess each having your own kind of separate area that you're going to focus on. I'm an accountant, so I handle all the office.
And do you work full-time in the?
I work part-time. We have 4 little boys. So I do school pickups. We put an office on our house, so I can run and do that and still get some work done. So I work from home and stuff to make that work.
It's working okay? You're still speaking? And
Yeah. And he's mostly out at the plant and stuff. So.
I just happened to sit in between them.
Just don't do it.
This is the good seat.
Go ahead.
Well, for myself, I mean, me and my husband are co-owners, but my husband still works his full-time job. He's still in law enforcement, which, by the way, was also huge in making sure that we had working income. Because that first year, I still paid myself, but it was just enough. So that really, really, really helped us. So it kept our household expenses going. It's also fantastic for networking because he's always out there talking to other people. But between us, I guess it works for us because we're not working together 24 hours a day. It's great because we can talk about work and it's similar industries, similar relationships. So we've got two little girls. Well, they're not little anymore, but at the time they were quite young. But that was the joy of having my own business, is that once things got going, I don't miss any of their school stuff during the day because I can go. And it's such a wonderful feeling. It started off as a job and now it's a business and now I can do all of these things. So it's, once you get things going, it's just the most wonderful gift you can give yourself.
Since tonight is about financial forecasting, specifically, I guess, in the retailer for Whitney, and I'm sorry,
Sarah.
How, without having a business established, because the two of you are already going for 2 years, but how did you guess, what we're saying, our monthly highs and lows? How did you figure out when those would be for your industries?
For me, when we started, did anybody remember GI Gens? So GI Gens closed down. They closed down, we knew that they were closing, they were retiring. So what we did is we immediately, it was literally a 2-day decision. We went and talked to them because it went crazy. Anyways, we got the idea in October, we were open by January. It happened like that. But so we were able to get their previous financial records when we just bought their inventory. We didn't buy their business, which is also a very smart idea. Be very careful with that. We bought their assets, we didn't buy the business, which saved us a whole heap of trouble in the long run. But anyways, so it gave us a starting ground so we can kind of see, okay, what did they do? What could we do better? It didn't really help us so much in the projections, but we kind of just used my husband's industry and say, okay, well, when do you go in and buy stuff? When the weather changes, right? Right before winter, right before summer. And that was pretty close. The other thing is because we're dealing with a lot of government agencies, their budgets switch in January. January and February are one of our biggest months. Number one, because the weather changes, and number two, because the budget's reset. December is busy because people are trying to spend what they've got. And in January, they're busy because they got new money. So it's kind of just thinking ahead and looking at your customers and actually thinking about when do they get their money? Because when they get their money, that's when you can possibly get your money.
And I think for us, we did a lot of research as far as when we first opened up our business, we were strictly focused on weddings, which is interesting because now I actually do a larger percentage of other events than we do weddings. But
that was probably your MVP.
Yeah, yes, it was, absolutely. That was it. It was just a wedding rental shop is basically what our plan was. It is not that now, but you have to be flexible. So we did lots of our research on Stats Canada, really. So in finding out how many weddings take place in Southern Alberta a year, and what is the average cost of wedding decorations, just sort of doing some research as far as that, and then guessing same kind of thing as far as seasonal. Around here, most people get married in the summer. Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to be a little bit slower in the other time. So then it's also being the seasonal, you have to really take into consideration when you're bringing in the money in your busy season. Well, what are you going to do in that off season to, keep going as well? So do you fill that hole or do you just save all your money and then get through the not busy season too? So ours was a lot of guesswork. Which after doing hours upon hours upon hours of research, it was pretty accurate, I think.
Research is the key.
Research is the key.
But Beekman's, you had a brand new product, so how or what did you look at at the beginning of time?
We started off with, so we bought equipment from 2 different manufacturers who were shutting their door, and we thought we could do a better job.
Different job, right?
Well, fairly similar, and we just thought we could do better. And we still think we do it better, but it wasn't as easy as it should have been, as it was supposed to be. But initially we had a sales company that was doing sales for both of these companies, and we were relying on those sales. And so we ended up having to buy out the market share to actually take control of our own sales. And so that's things where we weren't planning on doing any sales. We were going to be a manufacturer. Now we're doing 95% of our own sales. Yeah. And so we really had to pivot in that way. And even now, my busiest time the last 2 years was November to February. This year it was my slowest time. And most of my customers are joined to one big customer. And my biggest customer, they do 20 billion in sales a year. They're a multinational, they're in 30 countries. And I met with them 2 weeks ago and I said, what's going on with the market? They said, well, we overspent our budgets. So now we just got our budgets, so things should pick up a little bit. So someone spends their budgets and it affects you, but if you're not in touch with it, you're wondering, am I in the wrong industry? Yes. Am I having to pivot? And so for me, it's crucial to be able to talk to customers too.
I think everybody needs to talk to their customers, and you're right. It doesn't matter whether it's your research or if it's a little bit later and you're trying to fine-tune some things. Go ahead, Stephanie.
So one of the questions I guess I have based off of what I'm hearing a lot from you guys is how much planning did you put into risk management planning and building redundancy into your business plan? And do you do any of that now from some of the lessons you might have learned earlier on if you didn't do it?
Not near enough.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Stephanie might take that one.
Yeah.
Do you mean planning for your assets? Do you mean for your assets?
Well, not just assets, but employment
Business?
employee issues, like supply issues. Like you were saying, you do all the hats, right? So what happens if you become sick or injured and can't do it? What are the backup plans, kind of, to make sure that your business can continue while you're gone? Is it like that kind
Cross training?
We have.
Next in charge, or?
So we've got a third partner in our business who's my dad.
Okay.
And he's switching to sales a little more, and I'm switching more to plant management. But we were able to switch off on the employees are our most valuable asset. We run for 24 hours a day, on average 9 months a year. And so we're never feeling like we're in control. We're never where we want to be, but right now we're looking at, hey, if every week we can make one new system, if every week we can make one thing a little easier, and you know what, if we get one thing every 3 weeks, sometimes we're good, but if we can build a system, if we can set up one thing where it's going to make it easier next month, that's crucial thing, is just a continuous improvement.
Have you guys had the insurance talk yet?
Briefly, because we had a panel.
Okay. When I first started, because for the first 2 years I did everything, so if I got sick, and I had surgery, the store was closed for 2 weeks. That for me was kind of an eye-opening, what happens? I actually ended up getting insurance that basically would cover, I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was called, but
Business interruption.
thank you, business interruption insurance. So if you are the only person who keeps your business going and you're not making money if you're not there, you need to look into this. It's not that expensive. So basically, if something happened to me, if I got sick, if I got injured, any of this, it covered my rent, it covered all of those fixed expenses while I was sick. Now, even just a couple of years ago, I've got employees now, I could actually then, I didn't need that insurance anymore. So never pay more than you're willing to lose. That's kind of what I think about insurance. But business interruption insurance, if you are the only person keeping that going, it's a necessity. You have to.
I know some people have to leave, so if you go ahead, if you want to say anything, we can talk into a few more minutes. Right?
And remember, it's Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Yes.
And I want to put a plug in. If you want an incredible experience on March 8th, which is a Friday, we have the RBC Summit in the Students' Union building here. and it's from 7:45 in the morning till 4 o'clock. We have Alana Rosenfeld coming from Kicking Horse Coffee. We have Lisa Caruso, who has the toddler monitor. We have a number of local people who will be speaking. We have an angel investor that is absolutely superb that's coming out of Vancouver, and this guy will tell you how to get money from angel investors, what not to do, what to do. It's very interesting. I've been studying it lately, and there's a wonderful TEDx talk out there. Women dominate so many startup businesses, but they only get 2% of the angel investors' capital. And it's absolutely amazing. And the bias by venture capitalists and angel investors are both men and women investors and how they view women. And it kills me because I have 2 daughters, so I'm constantly trying to look through their eyes at things, and it's quite disappointing to see that. He's going to come and he's going to talk. It'll be absolutely amazing. I guarantee you. It's free of charge.
Oh, is it?
Free of charge. RBC is the sponsor. They give us a bunch of money to put these on. So March 8th, Friday, it's upstairs at Students' Union Building. All you have to do is go to www.rbcsummit.ca and enroll. It's on Eventbrite there. We are already at capacity for the student side of it. We haven't told too many people in community, but it will be sold out. There will be 240 people there. And I have no doubt. We sold out last year and this year, and it's free. You'll learn from a lot of people. It's fantastic, so come to it.
There's a couple of events that are coming up, and I put them on your materials site, like the ATB Entrepreneur Luncheons. There's some really good ones coming up. And there's, can't remember now, it's late, my brain's dead. But I put a few of those on the site. So take a look at what's coming up that's free. Oh, I know, Craig Elias is doing March 14th and 15th at the Tech Connect. And that one's, I think, $10 because they're feeding you. So there's a lot of those free things available if you just keep your eyes out. But go to the shared materials site and you'll see some more. You made me think of something.
Craig Elias will blow your mind away. He's
gonna be our speaker
amazing.
on February 26th.
He entered a competition for his business idea, won $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million.
Won $1 million for his business idea. Problem is, he wouldn't move down to Silicon Valley to execute on it because his wife-to-be said, no, thank you. So love is powerful, powerful, right? Absolutely amazing.
Stephanie, did you have another question?
Just a kind of a follow-up to the partner question that was asked earlier by the on-site person is there, like, I don't know if any of you can really answer it, but how do you balance stuff when you're single? Because you don't have that at-home person who can potentially pick up the extra stuff as well, and you don't have that extra income coming in, so you're kind of doing all that stuff. So I was just wondering if anyone has that or from other entrepreneurs.
I can. I think I can answer that. So when I started the business, I was married. So when we first started, and then realizing 6 months later, like we can't keep our full-time jobs, we have to go into the business. And then I went down to part-time, and then very quickly quit to work in the business full-time. So I think it has to be like a really big discussion, you know, with your partner as far as still maintaining the household. But throughout the experience, I got divorced and I was single for a long time, and I still run the business single, and I keep it, you know, at arm's length on purpose. And I think it's a struggle. Like I can't really, you know, I don't think there's any magic way to do it. I lived in poverty for years, you know, like it's just if, you know, could find a cheap place to rent. And we also ended up moving our business location from a large store that was costing us like $2,500 a month rent to moving most of my inventory at home. So that made a big difference. So home office, so if you're already paying a mortgage, home office, storage at home, anything you can do as far as helping that stuff out. And again, I don't think there's any easy way to it. It is a struggle. You just have to have a plan so that you're knowing in the future, you're not going to live like that forever. You have to have some type of plan and a goal to get to not live like that anymore.
Did any of you want to give up after a year or whatever? You know how those statistics are? Okay.
I still have days.
Every day.
I still,
Like,
no,
not
I
every
still
day,
have
but-
days. Like, even though like it's really, really funny though, successful you are and you get so into it. And then some days or some weeks or some months or some customers
Yeah.
just make you go, I can't do this.
Why?
I just want a paycheck. I just want a paycheck. Every time I write paychecks to my employees, sometimes I'm like, oh, right? But number one, pay yourself. If you can't pay yourself, especially if you're single, it doesn't have to be huge, but you gotta pay yourself enough to pay the rent. You gotta pay yourself enough to feed yourself. You gotta make sure you have that insurance just in case, and then never overspend. Watch what you're spending on inventory, whatever kind of business it is. Don't overextend yourself. Have that growth plan in the future, but if you don't take care of you and your immediate needs, you're going to want to give up. So if you still, look into the future, but taking care of yourself now is really, really important.
And I think be realistic about borrowing at the beginning
Yes.
as well. Like lots of people will think like, including myself, I'm just gonna borrow a bunch of money, and then and my business plan says that in 4 years I'm gonna have it all paid back and that I'm gonna be making lots of money. Well, it doesn't always go that way. So I think you need to be really realistic about, we did the whole no principal payments, we just paid interest for a year, which was an option that the bank was offering. Now I'm thinking that was a big mistake because it was unrealistic as far as what our expenses were, especially in that first year. And then all of a sudden you get to the second year and your expenses are more than double, especially on that loan payment than what they were before. So I think it's, just be really realistic about what you can afford and your budget and really even down to the dollar and then stepping outside the box. You can save $15 on your internet or whatever, do it. Make the phone call. Every $15 adds up to something else. So
Don't think you need everything, because let me tell you, they'll try to sell you everything. The advertising, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. Thinking outside the box in all of those expenses will help. You can still advertise without spending $1,000 a month. We do a lot of donation advertising, and it's great because it goes directly to our target market. You donate something to a charity or donate your time. I actually donated myself at the last YWCA Harbor House auction. Somebody got to borrow, or I worked for a real estate office for a day. But it gets your name out there. It doesn't cost you a lot of money. Donate some old inventory. That has been awesome for us because number one, it reduces your inventory cost. It gets it out of the store. It gets your name. Stuff like that will really help you.
we do the donation thing too. It's huge.
Plus, it's good. I mean, it makes you feel good too, right? It gets your name out there. It builds good customer relations. It's just a win-win.
And if you do advertise, track your results of that
Yes.
advertisement. Whether it's say, clip this ad for 10%, bring it in for 10% off, whatever you want to do. I
That's
ask
huge,
all
yeah.
of you how you got referred, et cetera, so then we know, okay, maybe we don't need to spend as much money on this area or that area, but track so that you do have results and you can do something different next time. We're keeping a long time. If anybody has another question, no more, Stephanie. Anything that you would like to wind up with that we haven't talked about that you think it would be valuable for the students?
I guess rule number one is know your customers. Rule number one, because if you don't, you underestimate them, you undervalue them, you don't treat them how they want to be treated, all of that entire bubble. And that's the one thing I hear from everybody. Oh no, we've got lots of customers, do you? Or my customers want this, do they?
Did you ask that?
Did you? And not just that, just put yourself in their shoes, like really, really, really know your customers. And yeah,
Goodwill versus bad will? Goodwill versus bad will?
yes.
You know, a happy person tells 5, but someone who's dissatisfied will tell 20 or
Yeah.
something, so be very careful.
Exactly, but don't be afraid to say no to them. We got in that trick at the very beginning.
Our policy
We were
says,
we were so insistent on keeping that happy customer relation that we started to get taken advantage of a little bit. So just keep that in check as well too. I mean, you still obviously want to do the best for them, but being able to reiterate, tell them, you know what, I'm sorry, we can't do this warranty. You clearly cut a hole in your pants. Like, you know, we're not Costco, right? You can't eat half the cake and bring it back. Like, but still, you know, doing what you can to make them happy. You know, giving maybe free shipping. You know, what's $20 on a $1,000 order? But knowing where your lines are.
Stephanie?
Just being aware of, your costs and
Okay, yes, from an accounting point of
from
view.
an accounting point of view, being very aware of what you pay.
I think for me, it's just remembering that you need to be flexible. And so I think sometimes you get frustrated because like for me personally, I never feel like I'm caught up on anything. Like I always feel like I'm behind. And I'm like, focusing on the business, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. If I worked a bajillion hours every day, 24/7, I would still never be caught up. But I think like you guys were kind of saying about being flexible and pivoting and changing. Like every day I can wake up and have my calendar completely set out, and then my printer breaks or customer calls, and then I'm behind again tomorrow. So I think you just have to sort of get used to that and just be willing to embrace the different things that are going to happen to you every day.
Nothing goes as planned. Even
No,
though
it
it's
sure
bad.
doesn't.
Spend all day on email, right?
All of those
Oh,
things.
don't do that.
everything.
No, you can't. Jonathan, anything you'd like to leave us with?
I would say make sure there's financial allowance for problems. For us, we put our money in and we applied for bank loans and we got the loans thinking we were going to free up our money, and one day we hope to.
Contingencies, you're right. You need to set up
But-
contingencies for repairs, for
Yep.
all kinds of things.
Yeah, I think first year we were 100,000 over budget on repairs, but it was just, we got to know our equipment, right?
Bruce, I bet you've got a nice tip to end this with, or an example that I cut you off on.
I would say that if you expect to draw money out over and above what you're paying yourself for the first 7 years, you're probably off base.
Seven. Oh.
7 years.
We just passed that. Yes.
Yes, people don't want to hear that. Because the banks don't like the idea of you paying yourself first before they get paid,
Yes.
right? And I really like the comment about some of the bank loans allow you to just pay the interest and not the principal. In your cash flow, put that money aside. I was dealing with a husband and wife that make $250,000 up in Calgary, flat broke, owing the government money because they forgot that they had to pay tax on their business. They forgot about that. What do you mean I have to pay personal tax on what I've drawn out? Are you serious? Both well-educated from the formal, but no street smarts whatsoever. $250,000 income and they can't afford to live on it. So if you think it's just more money that it takes, you're so wrong. You know, the latest stat says $70,000 a year is a nice comfort level to be at. Less than that's tough. Over that, you can waste it really quick because the mind starts going on trips. And you know, one of the challenges is that people are looking for balanced lifestyle. In these businesses, I don't hear balanced lifestyle.
I remember last week, Laura Lee Burton said the second year business was going to be the most expensive because you had to pay this year's taxes last year's taxes, the year you just finished, plus you had to pay installments on your tax for the current year, right? So to work that into your budget too, but
Get a consultant.
get help. Well, thank you very much for coming. And thank you for answering our questions and being candid. We appreciate it. So thank you very much.